Chapter 1156. Constellation. At this moment, a voice rang out in the minds of everyone. Was that the constellation they condensed their astral souls to cultivate on? In this boundless starry space, there were countless constellations. Even though they were separated by an immeasurably great distance, they could still sense the power of the constellations and absorb the astral energy for their own use. However, only now did they understand how weak the astral energy they absorbed was when compared to the astral souls they had condensed. As their strength grew stronger, they would be able to absorb more astral energy bit by bit. Did humans create the world, or did the world create humans? Qin Wentian mumbled in a low voice. In that case, is it the astral souls that create the constellations, or is it the constellations that create the astral souls? As the sound of his voice faded, the gazes of everyone turned to Qin Wentian. Such a brazen thought truly caused their hearts to tremble. They naturally understood what Qin Wentian meant. How similar were constellations and astral souls? Astral souls were formed from constellations, and as the astral souls grew stronger and stronger, they would grow more and more familiar with the constellation. If there was a day when an astral soul was as strong as a constellation, wouldn't their astral soul be a constellation as well? Such a brazen thought caused them to once again feel how tiny and insignificant they were. Even for those at the peak of immortal foundation, when they stared at the constellations below the starry sky, other than gazing up, what else could they do? One day, when you all stand at the peak of cultivation, would you also be as resplendent as the constellations in the night sky, radiating boundless radiance that cascaded down onto the world, representing the law and order of the world? The ethereal voice slowly rang out. Everyone inclined their heads and stared at the starry sky. The brightest constellations in the sky were like supreme experts standing there. They sank into contemplation, and as they contemplated, the ethereal voice didn't stop. It continued quietly, transmitting its voice into their minds. Every sentence, every voice seemed to be able to cause them to sink into contemplation. In fact, it even caused a resonance in the depths of their hearts. From big to small, from constellations to astral souls, from astral souls to cultivation, this voice unceasingly seeped into their ears, causing them to be intoxicated, unable to extricate themselves. Their eyes had long since closed, as they entered the state of cultivation. Enlightenment was difficult, and it was a situation that cultivators yearned for. A single moment of enlightenment was better than many years of cultivation. However, when the Sacred Academy was lecturing, this ethereal voice was able to send people into a state of enlightenment again and again. Such a heaven-defying method was rarely seen in the world. Even the geniuses of the top powers and their elders did not have such an ability. The people of the world treasured the chance of the Sacred Academy appearing in the immortal realms so much, sending their juniors to the Sacred Academy for cultivation. No major powers dared to underestimate the Sacred Academy. From this, one could see the status of the Tiandao Sacred Academy in the immortal realms. Although the Tiandao Sacred Academy hasn't appeared in the immortal realms for many years, it still possessed an incomparably terrifying influence. This kind of influence was naturally a reputation that had been accumulated since ancient times. Once every 12 years, the Sacred Academy lectured twice, sending everyone who listened to the lecture of the Sacred Academy into a state of enlightenment. The ethereal voice was like the melody of the great Tao, like the evening drum and morning bell, ringing in the hearts of the cultivators, as well as in their minds, opening the door to cultivation for them, allowing them to see further, helping them to walk even further in the future. When everyone was in a state of enlightenment, the vast Sacred Academy actually started to change. The entire structure of the Sacred Academy, under the illumination of the boundless radiance, was changing bit by bit. If one stood at the peak of the Sacred Academy and gazed into the distance, they should be able to see 4 Sacred Academies floating in the air. These 4 Sacred Academies were very similar. They floated in the air with ancient stairways, exuding an ethereal and holy aura. In the center of these 4 Sacred Academies, there was a boundlessly vast region where one could faintly see a world. This was none other than the sky-connecting realm. It was just that at this moment, the people cultivating in the 4 Sacred Academies still had no idea that the 4 Sacred Academies had appeared. They were still immersed in their cultivation. 27th year of the Sacred Academy. In the Sacred Academy where Qin Wentian was in, many people gradually woke up. The king of the Tianping people, the golden-winged great rock, Jianantian, broke through to the 9th level of Immortal Foundation. Golden light illuminated the sky as the shadow of the golden-winged great rock appeared in the air, causing many experts to turn their gazes to Jianantian. The king of the Tianping people, the golden-winged great rock, had broken through to the 9th level of Immortal Foundation. Most probably no one in this Sacred Academy would be able to stand against him. Even if the 4 Sacred Academies joined forces, there wouldn't be many who could stand against him. After breaking through, Jianantian was still cultivating, as though he wasn't willing to wake up. In the same year, the demonic lion also broke through, stepping into the 9th level of Immortal Foundation. Naturally, other than them, there were over 100 other experts who also broke through. However, the commotion caused by their breakthroughs wasn't as great as the 2 of them, because based on the rankings, the 2 of them were seated in the 2nd row. And based on their cultivation bases, they broke through from the 8th level to the 9th level. It was easy to break through to a lower level, but it was extremely difficult to break through to a higher level. If one didn't have any good fortune, it would be extremely common for them to be stuck at the same level for over 1,000 years at the 8th level. Everyone understood how rare it was for them to have the opportunity to break through to the next level at the Tiandao Sacred Academy. For those who missed out on the first lecture in the Sacred Academy, they all sighed in regret. They finally understood how rare it was for them to have a lecture in the Sacred Academy. For the 28th year in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, many experts knew that they had no way to improve further. Some of them walked out of the Sacred Academy and stared into the distance. To their shock, they discovered that there were 3 other Sacred Academies appearing in the air. For the 30th year in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, Qin Wentian broke through and stepped into the 5th level of Immortal Foundation. He consecutively gave 2 lectures in the Sacred Academy and broke through to the next level. His cultivation base originally wasn't very high and wouldn't attract much attention. But because he was seated in the lead seat, he was extremely conspicuous. However, this year, the number of people seated in the seats in the Tiandao Sacred Academy was already dwindling. Many people woke up and left, but Jianantian and the demonic lion didn't leave. They were still cultivating, and other than them, there were hundreds of others who were still cultivating. Some were awake, while others were still in the midst of comprehension. For the 32nd year in the Tiandao Sacred Academy, only Qin Wentian remained. At the same time, many people discovered that the Sacred Academies had changed. The 4 Sacred Academies were interconnected, and the sky-connecting realm was no longer an illusory world. One could enter it with their true self. It was a world of combat. However, the sky-connecting realm was still enveloped by the law, and one couldn't borrow any external power upon entering. Also, at the instant one was killed, they would be teleported out of the sky-connecting realm. Most probably, the Sacred Academies didn't want to see a large number of cultivators from the Sacred Academy dying because of competition. Other than this, they also discovered that in the 4 locations where the Tao lectures were held, there was actually a formless energy within. After one ascended the stairway, there was no way to return. When Little Rascal, Purgatory and the others wanted to return to see Qin Wentian, they discovered that they had no way to ascend the stairway. This caused many to speculate that could it be that the Sacred Academies would only hold Tao lectures twice? In addition, there were rumors circulating around the Sacred Academies that the sky-connecting realm wasn't just on the 1st level. There were people who personally witnessed a supreme ranker on the Supreme Might rankings vanishing from the Tongtian Heavenstone. In the Sacred Academies, there were over 10,000 experts. Among them, the human Wuxia was the most. The number of demons was far less than the human Wuxia. After all, the number of demons from the desolate 10,000 mountain range of the northern regions was simply too little. Also, the immortal realms belonged to the human Wuxia after all. Only a few powerful demonic races could stand tall in the immortal realms. Right now, the Sacred Academy was even more lively compared to the past. However, Qin Wentian was still quietly cultivating on his immortal seat. The Sacred Academy was incomparably quiet. He was the only one there, staring at the statue. Although many years have passed, he still hadn't awoken from his trance. 33rd year of the Sacred Academy. The geniuses of the immortal realms have already been in the immortal realms for 33 years. Outside the Sacred Academy, there were changes happening every day. However, to those powers that stood at the peak, the immortal realms were the same as before, because standing at their peak, the deaths and deaths of countless lives, as well as the replacement of countless peak powers, were like raindrops splashing into a river. Although there would be splashes, there was no difference. The gazes of the immortal realms were still on the Sacred Academy. The appearance of the Sacred Academy had the possibility to change the future of the immortal realms. Today, outside the Sacred Academy, a beautiful figure appeared on the platform used for the examination of talent. This figure was incomparably beautiful, but when she released her astral souls, many people were disappointed. However, her immortal foundation wasn't bad. It was a 4th-tier king-grade immortal foundation. Maybe in the eyes of many, she could already be considered a heaven's chosen. But in the perspective of the entire immortal realms, it was still far from enough to enter the Sacred Academy. In terms of beauty, this woman is truly as beautiful as a celestial maiden from the heavens. However, her cultivation base is only at the first level of immortal foundation. Although her talent is good, it isn't outstanding. She is still far from being qualified to enter the Sacred Academy. Someone sighed. And as expected, the shadow on the platform shook his head. You should know that given the talent you displayed, you don't have the qualifications to enter the Sacred Academy. Junior understands. It's just that Junior still begs Senior to give me a chance. The young woman bowed. Her beautiful face was filled with sincerity. Your innate talent isn't strong. You should have undergone some form of transformation. You must have had some good fortune, and might have some accomplishments in the future. But even so, it is still insufficient for you to enter the Sacred Academy. Go on. The shadow spoke. This beautiful young woman was like the darling of the world. No matter who it was, they wouldn't be able to help her. Even for this expert in charge of the Sacred Academy, although he didn't agree, he still said a few more words. Senior, please grant me my wish. The young woman still refused to leave. She bowed, her eyes filled with an intense obsession. Why must you be so stubborn? There are still trials ahead. If you can't enter the Sacred Academy, you might even be trapped here for many years. That expert spoke. Junior's husband has entered the Sacred Academy for over 30 years. I know that my talent and cultivation base are far inferior compared to him. Hence, I bitterly cultivated, not wanting to be left behind too far. I hope that I can accompany him by his side. The Sacred Academy is rumored to be a holy ground for cultivation. Firstly, I can accompany my husband, and secondly, I can raise my strength. Hence, after my immortal foundation stabilized, I immediately rushed here. Since there are still trials ahead, I beg Senior to let me try. If I fail, I would have no regrets. Who is your husband? That expert asked. The young woman's immortal sense surged as a projection appeared. After that expert saw it, he waved his hand and spoke, Go on in. Many thanks, Senior. The young woman bowed and walked towards the entrance of the Sacred Academy. Chapter 1157. Year 35 of Tiandao Sacred Academy. Qin Wentian, who was sitting on the immortal seat, opened his eyes. His gaze was calm and deep, his aura was retracted. He didn't expect that this cultivation session would last for 11 years. There were no other people in the surroundings. Out of the 3,000 immortal seats, he was the only one remaining. Finally, the cultivation session has ended. An ethereal voice drifted over. Qin Wentian nodded. Senior, the lecture of the Tao in the Sacred Academy is held once every 12 years. The next 12 years will soon arrive. Are you still able to come here to listen to the lecture? No. The ethereal voice rang out. Going too far is as bad as not going far enough. 2 lectures on the Tao, you guys gained enlightenment twice. This should be enough to accompany you for many years, and would be of help to your cultivation. Right now, the rules of the Tiandao Sacred Academy have changed. You can go down the mountain to take a look. If there's another lecture, we will naturally inform you. If not, just let nature take its course. Qin Wentian nodded lightly, feeling a little pity. Had the rules of the Tiandao Sacred Academy changed? He stood up and walked down the immortal seat. He turned his head and stared into the distance, only to see 3 other sacred academies floating in the air. He naturally knew what they were. Since the 4 sacred academies could see each other, they should be connected to each other. When I entered the Sacred Academy, I once went to an ancient castle to comprehend the Tao. May I ask Senior where that place is? Qin Wentian asked. You can see the entrance of the 4 academies from the ancient castle. The ancient castle is naturally located in the center of the 4 academies. The ethereal voice rang out. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed as he stared at the center of the 4 academies. Over there seemed to be a world of its own, the sky-connecting realm. The ancient castle is in the sky-connecting realm? Qin Wentian felt somewhat puzzled. There didn't seem to be any ancient castles in the sky-connecting realm. The sky-connecting realm. If you can reach the heavens, you will be able to create a world of your own. Go on. That voice rang out. Qin Wentian silently comprehended. After that he bowed to the statue and spoke. Junior bids my farewell. After saying this, he walked down the ancient mountain stairs step by step. When he turned back to look at the Sacred Academy again, a mysterious aura enveloped it. It was likely that it would be difficult to go back up. He lifted his foot and walked forward, his steps filled with determination. Unknowingly, he had already broken through to the 5th level of Immortal Foundation. His combat prowess was many times stronger compared to when he first entered the Sacred Academy. Even in the Sacred Academy where demon-level geniuses were as common as the clouds, he wasn't as weak as when he first entered the Sacred Academy. The rules of the Sacred Academy have truly changed. Qin Wentian could sense a formless law energy enveloping this world. He suddenly had a sense of comprehension. Most probably, in the current Sacred Academy, immortal-ranked weapons and treasures were no longer of any use. The rules of the sky-connecting realm had also changed. It was no longer necessary to enter through the sacrificial altar. Instead, one could directly enter with their true body, directly entering the central region of the sky-connecting realm. In addition, there were 4 exits leading to the 4 sacred academies, located in 4 different directions. After the people of each sacred academy entered, they would be able to head to the Tongtian Heavenstone and view the Supreme Might rankings. At this moment, Qin Wentian stood on the Tongtian Heavenstone. Before him, there were over 10 figures engraved on the Supreme Might rankings. Not only were there incomparably tyrannical characters of the sky-connecting realm, there were also characters who had reached the pinnacle of their cultivation bases. For those who were at the same level as them, they had never been defeated before. Their portraits were also engraved on the Supreme Might rankings. The sky-connecting realm. If one could connect to the heavens, they would be able to create a world of their own. Qin Wentian comprehended this sentence and faintly understood some things. After observing for some time, Qin Wentian directly left this place and found the exit of another sacred academy. After so many years, he missed Qing'er, he missed Qingcheng, and he also missed Junmingchen. Qingcheng wasn't in the sacred academy, but Qing'er, Junmingchen, Ziqingxian and the others were all cultivating in the sacred academy. Their improvements should also be very great, right? The sky-connecting realm was very vast, and the 4 sacred academies were also very vast. It wasn't easy to find a single person. After walking to another sacred academy, Qin Wentian saw many experts contending against each other. And there were even group battles. Most probably, this was a group of people who were equally proud and arrogant. It was naturally impossible for them to avoid sparring. Other than this, he also discovered that the sacred academy he was in before was the one with the least number of people. The number of people in this sacred academy was clearly much more compared to the sacred academy he was in. Naturally now, the sacred academy was still the sacred academy. The 4 sacred academies were all part of the Tiandao Sacred Academy. There was no distinction between the sacred academy and the sacred academy. Qin Wentian didn't know that during these years of cultivation, many things had happened. The expert from the Tianpeng people, Jiagu, was unhappy that Qin Wentian had ascended to the first seat and had a conflict with Namhuang Yunqi and Little Rascal, injuring a few of them. The White Tiger people also had a grudge against Qin Wentian and the Namhuang clan. Hence, they had fought against the Namhuang clan and the Battle Saint tribe many times. Other than this, because Leba hated Chu Qingyi for claiming that she was Qin Wentian's woman back then, he felt humiliated. His cultivation base grew stronger and stepped into the 8th level of Immortal Foundation, becoming unexcelled in the world. He even said that he wanted to humiliate the woman Qin Wentian liked, Princess Qing'er. He even tried to cause trouble for Jun Mingchen several times, but was stopped by the disciples of the Heavenly Talisman realm. Both sides fought several times. Qing'er suffered many harassment. Her personality was cold, and she didn't like to speak much. But even so, there were still some extremely arrogant people who claimed that Qing'er would be his woman. They even said that they wanted their elders to head to the Evergreen Kingdom to propose marriage. Other than these people that Qin Wentian was familiar with, there were also many conflicts between the other experts. Qin Wentian strolled through the Sacred Academy. He didn't meet Jun Mingchen and the others. Instead, he met some people he was familiar with. These people were people he had only met once before. And just this one time, when they stood before Qin Wentian, their eyes were filled with sharpness and coldness. This was especially so for that beautiful maiden clad in a red dress. The long dress accentuated her figure perfectly, making her seem exceptionally beautiful. However, her eyes were so cold that it caused people to feel a chill in their hearts. The matter in the past was a misunderstanding. Qin Wentian stared at that maiden as he spoke. These people were experts from the Shooting Sun Kingdom. Back then in the Sky Connecting Realm, he was tricked by Monk Wuxia and he had to help Wuxia to resolve the situation. I'm acquainted with you. When you entered the Sacred Academy, your immortal foundation was already perfect. You were together with that lecherous monk, and you even did such a thing to Chu Qingyi before abandoning her. I can imagine what sort of person you are. The maiden spoke coldly, her words causing Qin Wentian to shake his head and smile bitterly. A single sentence from that woman, Chu Qingyi, not only did she hurt herself, she also destroyed his reputation. Sometimes, what you see and hear might not be the truth. In truth, I also wish to find Monk Wuxia and give him a good beating. If you find him, you must be more ruthless when you do so. As for Chu Qingyi, the punishment I gave her was definitely not too excessive. I wouldn't do such things to her as you imagined. I have a woman I like, and she is currently in the Sacred Academy. Qin Wentian spoke. Are you referring to Qing'er from the Evergreen Kingdom? That maiden asked, her words causing Qin Wentian to start. Seems like this maiden had investigated him before. Since you know about Qing'er, you should know that I'm not lying. Qin Wentian could sense that although the eyes of this maiden were cold, there were no malicious intents in them. She also didn't have any thoughts of killing him. Most probably, she just wanted to teach him a lesson. If that monk Wuxia really did something to her, this was something he ought to do. Hence, Qin Wentian was extremely polite. Who knows what you guys are thinking? The maiden's tone was filled with unwillingness, especially when she thought of that damnable monk. However, let me remind you out of goodwill. Even if the person you like is Princess Qing'er, it's still hard to say if she would be able to become your woman. The maiden spoke, her words causing Qin Wentian's eyes to flash. He smiled. I've been to the Evergreen Kingdom before. I believe there shouldn't be too many twists and turns in this matter. You are truly confident, but you should know that as long as the dust hasn't settled, there will always be variables. The maiden continued. There aren't many peak-level beauties in the immortal realms, and those with outstanding talents are even rarer. Just so coincidentally, many of these beauties are in the Sacred Academy, and the young men in the Sacred Academy are all the most outstanding geniuses in the immortal realms. You should also know that for someone like Jidi's disciple and the daughter of the Evergreen Immortal Emperor, there would definitely be many geniuses who have their eyes on her. It's only normal for them to have their eyes on Qing'er. My judgment has always been good. Qin Wentian smiled. Even Chu Qingyi had many pursuers, let alone Qing'er. The maiden discovered that he didn't seem to mind at all. In fact, he seemed to be somewhat arrogant instead. She couldn't help but to silently muse that this young man before her was truly an extremely arrogant young man. He didn't seem to care about his competitors at all. Maybe what Chu Qingyi said might not be true. Pride was something that wasn't easy to disguise. especially when he was facing her. If you knew who those people are, you might not be so confident. The maiden smiled. Let me remind you again out of goodwill. Not long ago, there was an arranged battle in this sacred academy, and you should be acquainted with the main characters. There's Leba from the Thunder God Hall, and another young man named Jun Mingchen. Qin Wentian's gaze froze as he asked, "Where is it?" "I can bring you there." That maiden spoke. After that, her silhouette flickered as she sped away. Qin Wentian's silhouette flashed as he followed after her. "Why are you helping me?" Qin Wentian walked to the side of the maiden as he asked. "Do you think I'm helping you?" The maiden smiled as she stared at Qin Wentian. Staring at her gaze, Qin Wentian seemed to understand what she meant. Most probably, Jun Mingchen would be the weaker one in this arranged battle. And if he went there himself, given the hatred Leba had for him, there was no need for this maiden to do anything. Qin Wentian didn't say anything more. He followed closely after the maiden as they flew towards the location of the arranged battle. In a vast ancient palace, the geniuses of the various powers were all staring in the same direction. In the airspace above the ancient palace, experts from both camps were currently facing each other. In addition, many of them were injured. Evidently, they had already clashed once. Jun Mingchen was currently fighting. His perfect immortal foundation as well as his powerful combat prowess clearly displayed his talent. He domineeringly suppressed his opponents, exuding magnificence through the generations. There were many spectators at the side. They were all clad in luxurious robes and exuded an air of supremacy. There was one among them, although he was very young. His eyes gleamed with an intense battle intent as he stared at Jun Mingchen's battle. Was it the aura of an emperor? He stepped out as the might of his immortal foundation gushed forth. His entire body radiated an incomparably tyrannical aura, as though he was the ruler of the world, the human emperor of heaven and earth. Boom! Jun Mingchen defeated his opponent with a single punch. After that, the young man walked towards Jun Mingchen and blasted out with his palms. It was as though an ancient emperor had appeared in the world. A boundless might engulfed the heavens and earth, directly blasting towards Jun Mingchen. Jun Mingchen's countenance stiffened. He lifted his palms to defend, but the energy of the heavens and earth gushed forth, exuding boundless might. Despicable. An expert stepped out, wanting to act. However, the might of thunder descended from the sky. Leiba's body was like a god of thunder, unsurpassable. Chapter 1158. A disciple from the heavenly talisman realm, Tang Sheng, entered the immortal Qianbian Gate, and entered the sacred academy. His talent was very high and his cultivation base was very high, at the peak of immortal foundation. He entered the sacred academy because he wanted to break through to the immortal king realm. Any disciple from the heavenly talisman realm, in the perspective of the entire immortal realms, would be considered a genius at the peak. It would be tough for them to be defeated at the same cultivation level. Only in the sacred academy, the disciples from the heavenly talisman realm couldn't always succeed. Because the people here were all geniuses at the peak of the immortal realms. They represented the peak of immortal foundation in the immortal realms. Leba was undoubtedly a demon-level genius. His personality was incomparably tyrannical, and was known as the Thunder God's son. He was one of the leading characters in the immortal foundation realm of the Thunder God Hall. Right now, his cultivation base was at the 8th level and he was extremely tyrannical. Even disciples from the heavenly talisman realm, who were a level higher than him, were all obstructed by him. You guys have already been defeated and were defeated very miserably. Leba stared at Tang Sheng as he spoke. Is this your so-called arranged battle? Tang Sheng glanced at them. There were people from the Thunder God Hall and experts from the 9 Emperors' immortal state. How could they not be defeated when these two powers joined forces? Just take Jun Mingchen's opponent for example, a 6th level immortal foundation expert, one of the 3 leading characters of the 9 Emperors' immortal state, Huang Yudi. Huang Yudi's cultivation base couldn't be considered high. In truth, when he entered the sacred academy, his cultivation base was only at the 4th level. But now he was already at the 6th level. Such talent was extremely rare and in fact, His cultivation speed was the fastest among the 3 leading characters of the 9 Emperors' immortal state. Right now, Huang Wudi was already at the 9th level. However, everyone knew that in the future, Huang Yudi's accomplishments would surely surpass Huang Wudi. Right now, Jun Mengchen's cultivation base was at the 4th level of Immortal Foundation. He had also improved greatly in the Sacred Academy, but his opponent was Huang Yudi. How could he win? The 9 Emperors' immortal state was a peak-tier immortal empire in the central regions of the immortal realms. They had existed for countless years and had extremely deep foundations. The 9 great emperor scriptures were known as mystical books in the immortal realms, possessing boundless might. Within the immortal empire, geniuses were as common as the clouds. At the immortal foundation level, there were 3 most outstanding characters. All of them were incomparably dazzling. Huang Wudi dared to name himself invincible. Huang Jiyudi had enemies under the heavens. He was even more outstanding compared to Huang Wudi, who dared to fight against Jia Nantian back then. Therefore, even though Jun Mengchen's battle prowess was frighteningly strong, it was still impossible for him to defeat Huang Yudi. Very quickly, he was injured and spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at his opponent and said angrily, "I refuse to accept this." "Why not?" Huang Jiyudi clasped his hands behind his back, looking incomparably arrogant. "If I was at the 6th level of Immortal Foundation, what does your arrogance count for in front of me?" Jun Mengchen coldly spoke. A low cultivation base means a low cultivation base. How can there be ifs? Let me ask you again. The daughter of the evergreen immortal emperor, Qing'er, whose woman is she? Huang Jiyudi stepped out, like a human emperor descending from the heavens. His aura was boundless, unexcelled in the world. Emperor light radiated from him. Princess Qing'er is naturally the woman of my senior brother. In the future, she will be the wife of my senior brother. No matter how many times you ask, the answer will still be the same. Jun Mengchen spoke with cold arrogance. The conflict between him and Huang Jiyudi was precisely because of this. Who does your senior brother think he is? Huang Jiyudi spoke with cold arrogance. Since you refuse to change, I can only beat you up until you change. Princess Qing'er and my senior brother are in love with each other. Even the Chongqing the Great has tacitly agreed to this. You want me to deny this? How ridiculous. Even if you are temporarily stronger than me, your words are completely illogical. Logic? Huang Jiyudi laughed. In this world, there are actually people who use the word logic. What a joke. Don't you know that in the cultivation world, strength is logic? Before this, Leba once said that he wanted to pursue Princess Qing'er, but now he took the initiative to back out. Do you think it's because of logic? Huang Jiyudi didn't hide anything as he spoke. Leba's countenance stiffened, but when he thought of that person, he ultimately chose to remain silent. Since my elder brother has his eyes on Princess Qing'er is naturally his woman, my sister-in-law. No one can doubt this point. As for your senior brother, who does he think he is? Huang Jiyudi spoke slowly. When he mentioned the word elder brother, a rare look of reverence appeared in his arrogant eyes. Huang Wudi was his elder brother, but the person Huang Jiyudi respected was obviously not Huang Wudi, because his own talent was more outstanding than Huang Wudi's. To be able to make Huang Jiyudi respect someone much more outstanding than him, someone who could cultivate the 9 volumes of the Emperor's canon, someone who was flawless and shocking. There were many people from the 9 Emperors' immortal state standing behind Huang Jiyudi. When they heard Huang Jiyudi's words, their eyes showed that it was natural. It was as if Huang Jiyudi's words were the supreme truth, and there was no need to doubt it. His elder brother had his eyes on Princess Qing'er. Then, naturally, Princess Qing'er would be his elder brother's woman. In the future, you will know what kind of person my senior brother is, Jun Mengchen said coldly. He clenched his fists tightly and was incomparably furious. It was rumored that half a year ago, Huang Jiyudi's elder brother, the prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, met Huang Wudi and the others who were cultivating in this sacred academy in the sky-connecting realm. He said that the daughter of the Chongqing the Great was not bad. From then on, the people from the 9 emperors' immortal state warned everyone in the sky-connecting realm that the daughter of the Chongqing the Great, Qing'er, was the woman that the Prince of the Nine Emperors' immortal state had his eyes on. No one was allowed to touch her. Leiba had once said that he wanted to pursue Qin Wentian's woman because of Chu Qingyi, but because of a sentence from the prince, he announced that he would back out. However, Jun Mingchen was not convinced. Princess Qing'er was the woman that his senior brother, Qin Wentian, liked at that time. Naturally, it was impossible for her to be the woman of the Prince of the Nine Emperors' immortal state. Jun Mingchen's voice entered Huan Jiudi's ears. Huan Jiudi wanted Jun Mingchen to change his words. He had to change it. How overbearing was that? No matter what kind of person he is, if he appears in front of me, I will make him take the initiative to announce to the world that he has nothing to do with Princess Qing'er. Huan Jiudi was incomparably arrogant. His elder brother had indeed only said one sentence. But one sentence was enough because that was his elder brother. How tyrannical. Many in the surroundings were geniuses at the peak of the immortal realms. Among them, there was no lack of geniuses from the central regions. As people of the same generation, they naturally knew who were the more outstanding characters among them. And those from the Nine Emperors' immortal state were naturally the cream of the crop. This Huan Jiudi was truly as tyrannical as the rumors said, having no one in his eyes other than his elder brother. Huang Wudi was already very arrogant, but Huan Jiudi was even more arrogant compared to Huang Wudi. Naturally, he was also more capable of stirring up trouble. However, although he could afford to offend someone, others couldn't afford to offend him. Qin Wentian had already arrived. Although he didn't personally witness the battle, he heard the arrogant voice of Huan Jiudi. From the voice transmission transmitted by the beauty from the Sun Kingdom, he also knew that this person was Huan Jiudi, and what sort of character he was. Because there were too many spectators, and Jun Mingchen and the others were too busy to care about anything else, they didn't notice that Qin Wentian had already arrived. The elder brother he spoke of is in another sacred academy. He should be in the same sacred academy as the girl you like. As for Huan Jiudi, the reason why he announced this to the world was because he heard a single sentence from his elder brother in the sky-connecting realm. Just because of that sentence, the son of the thunder god, Leiba, decided to retreat. Now you should understand what I meant by the words I spoke to you before. The maiden transmitted her voice over. MHM. Qin Wentian nodded. The maiden beside him had a smile on her face. She didn't see any anger in Qin Wentian's eyes. Her beautiful eyes couldn't help but to be filled with curiosity. For anyone who heard someone telling them to admit that the girl they liked had no relationship with them, it was inevitable that they would be angry, right? Qin Wentian naturally had a reason to be angry. But so what? Could it be that he had to release his violent aura to vent his anger? You said that it was a misunderstanding back then. But in the end, you were still standing together with that perverted monk, and even went against us. This is the truth. And since I brought you here, I believe you won't blame me. If you take this step out, then the grudge between us will be over. The maiden calmly stared ahead. She was thinking that with the Qin Wentian she saw in her eyes, how could he not step out? Very fair. Qin Wentian nodded. She didn't guess wrongly. Qin Wentian stepped out. Looking at Qin Wentian walking towards the sky above the ancient palace, many gazes naturally landed on him. And the instant Leiba saw him, the lightning on his body trembled even more excitedly. His eyes flashed with cold lightning. Jun Mingchen stared at Qin Wentian. His eyes flickered with excitement. After so many years, senior brother Qin was still as elegant as ever. The aura on his body was even more unfathomable. In these 30-plus years, Qin Wentian's strength had improved tremendously. As for senior brother Qin, he wouldn't waste his time. The last time they met, Qin Wentian was captured and heavily injured. His aura was extremely weak. This was the first time in 30-plus years that they were truly reunited. Senior brother. Jun Mingchen calmly greeted. Even after so many years, he still called Qin Wentian senior brother so naturally. The people of the Nine Emperors' immortal state looked at Qin Wentian. When he called Qin Wentian senior brother, and sensed the aura on Leiba's body, they immediately knew who had arrived. How do you want me to announce it to the world? Qin Wentian said plainly. He walked to Jun Mingchen's side. He looked at Huang Yudi and spat out a bone-chilling voice. Countless gazes focused on the elegant silhouette that spat out a cold voice. The princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom watched as Qin Wentian walked out to face the 9 emperors' immortal state. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a hint of a smile. She thought to herself, I didn't misjudge him. He is indeed a proud person. However, some people didn't think so. For example, Leba. The rules of the Sacred Academy have changed for many years. You have also been hiding for so many years. Now, you finally dare to show yourself. I wonder what realm you have cultivated to that you dare to come out and walk around. Leba said plainly. He took a step forward. His tone was filled with a strong attitude of indifference and killing intent. Back then in the Sky Connecting Realm, Chu Qingyi's words were like lightning striking his chest and heart. He couldn't forget it. Back then, he was already insufferably arrogant. He didn't even put Qin Wentian in his eyes. Moreover, he had become stronger today. Qin Wentian had never been an opponent in his eyes. He was merely someone that he wanted to humiliate and kill. That was all. It was because Qin Wentian wasn't even qualified to be his opponent. Chapter 1159. Although Leba felt that Qin Wentian didn't even have the qualifications to be his opponent, for some things, Qin Wentian still had to pay the price. Also, back then, Qin Wentian was extremely ruthless in his actions. What sort of status did the Holy Maiden of the Snowdrift Sage Hall, Chu Qingyi, have? Although there were many holy maidens in the Snowdrift Sage Hall, they couldn't be compared to Qing'er, who was the disciple of GD and also the woman doted on by Changqing the Great. But even so, she was still profaned and humiliated by others. Also, everyone knew that he, Leba, was pursuing Chu Qingyi. In that case, Leba also had reason to believe that Qin Wentian was hiding from him, not daring to meet him. If not, the 4 sacred academies had already been connected through these years. Qin Wentian had no reason to not show himself. Although the sacred academy was very vast, it wasn't so vast that they wouldn't know of Leba's declaration. Since this was the case, if Qin Wentian was willing, he would naturally have a way to find him. But Qin Wentian didn't. Now that Qin Wentian finally came out, most probably, his cultivation base had improved greatly. Or maybe he saw his junior apprentice brother being humiliated and had no choice but to come out. Qin Wentian stared at Leba. Those deep eyes of his seemed to be able to penetrate through space, mincing Leba into pieces. Back then when Chu Qingyi acted against Jun Mingchen, she might still be able to find a reason to be implicated because of him. But the one who acted was Leba. Just like his name, he was tyrannical and domineering, standing up for Chu Qingyi. When had Qin Wentian ever existed in his eyes? He didn't, Huang Yuti didn't either. This was why they dared to be so arrogant and brazen. Qin Wentian turned around and looked at Jun Mingchen. He said, I'm sorry to have dragged you into this. Jun Mingchen smiled and didn't seem to care at all. He was naturally free and easy, so he naturally wouldn't think that he was implicated by his senior brother just because he was beaten. This kind of thinking was truly shameful. Senior brother, it's good that you're here. Some people are really too arrogant. Jun Mingchen said and briefly told Qin Wentian what had happened. Huang Yuti and Leba watched quietly. No one stopped Jun Mingchen because they wanted to let Qin Wentian know what had happened. If Qin Wentian didn't even know, how could they humiliate him? After listening to Jun Mingchen, Huang Yuti looked at Qin Wentian with a smile and said calmly, since you already know what happened and know that my senior brother has taken a fancy to Princess Qing, then you can say it yourself. Tell everyone that you and Princess Qing, of the Evergreen Kingdom have nothing to do with you. When Huang Yuti spoke these words, he was as calm as ever, so calm that it was as though these words were the truth, an unquestionable truth. Because he, Huang Yuti, was the one who said these words, because his elder brother had taken a liking to that princess. Qin Wentian narrowed his eyes as he stared at Huang Yuti. In fact, he didn't feel any anger, but it wasn't because he wasn't angry. It was because his anger had already been suppressed to a limit. He didn't mind others liking Qing, because that meant that Qing was very outstanding. Even if the other party wanted to woo Qing he knew that it would be no different from asking for trouble. But this man before him actually wanted him to personally tell the world that Qing or had nothing to do with him. This could no longer be described as arrogance or pride. But when Huang Yuti said this, he was actually so calm, as though this was how it should be. Qin Wentian also saw Huang Wuti. Back then in the sky-connecting realm, he had personally witnessed the battle between Jia Nantian and Huang Wuti. He naturally wouldn't forget who Huang Wuti was. As someone from the 9 Emperors' immortal state of the central regions, Huang Yuti was truly arrogant. There are some things that can't be avoided by remaining silent. Huang Yuti added when he saw that Qin Wentian didn't say anything. It's not that I'm silent, I'm just a little surprised. Qin Wentian finally spoke. Everyone stared at Qin Wentian with interest. Those geniuses who were here to watch the liveliness had thought of many possibilities. They thought that Qin Wentian might explode in anger, and they also thought that Qin Wentian would hide his killing intent in his heart. But now, Qin Wentian actually calmly said that he was somewhat surprised. But at this moment, Qin Wentian's lips parted as he continued. The crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state is actually an idiot. As the sound of his voice faded, the gazes of everyone froze. This sentence was truly interesting. Could the crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, Huang Yuti, be an idiot? Naturally not. Most probably no one would dare to think so. How could a young prince with heaven-defying talent who was even more outstanding than Huang Wuti by the 9 emperors' immortal state be an idiot? Interesting. Huang Yuti froze for a moment before he suddenly laughed. However, that pair of smiling eyes contained an eerie coldness that caused people's hearts to palpitate. Not interesting at all. Qin Wentian continued. Everyone in the eastern regions knows of my relationship with Qing'er. I once held Qing'er's hand in the Evergreen Kingdom's royal palace, and announced to the world that she is someone that I, Qin Wentian, like. Qing'er naturally likes me as well. But as the crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, you actually want me to tell everyone that I have no relationship with Qing'er? Other than an idiot, I really can't think of anyone who would say such a stupid thing. Huang Yuti laughed maniacally. Leiba also laughed maniacally. What you said seems to be logical, but things like logic are only meant for those who have no ability. If it was an ordinary person who wanted you to say those words, it would naturally be a stupid thing to say. But the person who wanted you to say those words is Huang Yuti, the crown prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state. In that case, he naturally isn't an idiot. A person behind Huang Yuti spoke. When someone is stronger than you, and much stronger, no matter how stupid the words he says to you, it would still be the truth. This sentence itself is also the truth. That person's voice was powerful and resonant, like the voice of truth. Even the spectators who were watching the show felt that this sentence was the truth. There was no such thing as logic in the world. How could there be any stupid words? The crux of the matter was who said it. Let's add a few more words. Huang Yuti looked at Qin Wentian and said, I want you to announce to the world that you have nothing to do with Princess Qing. And Princess Qing, is my brother's woman. Since you are the prince of the 9 emperors' immortal state, then your elder must be the monarch of the 9 emperors' immortal state. Such a person should be a rare and powerful figure. It's a pity that they seem to have neglected to teach their children, which led to such an uneducated son. I really feel sorry for them. Qin Wentian's calm voice contained a hint of anger. Who in the world wouldn't be able to hear it? He actually dared to implicate the ruler of the 9 emperors' immortal empire? From this, one could very well imagine the flames of rage burning in his eyes. Boom! Waves of violent imperial aura bloomed. It wasn't the aura from Huang Yuti, but the aura from the strong cultivators of the 9 emperors' immortal state behind him. This sentence not only said that Huang Yuti was uneducated, but it also seemed to imply that the monarch of the 9 emperors' immortal state didn't teach his son well. Otherwise, how could he have raised such an uneducated son like Huang Yuti? The young man in front of him was extraordinarily courageous. Although Huang Yuti didn't release any violent aura, the murderous intent in his eyes was even more intense. The Sacred Academy had rules that forbade killing. Otherwise, he would definitely kill the person in front of him. A dead person naturally couldn't compete with his elder brother for a woman. However, it was precisely because of such rules in the Sacred Academy that he needed Qin Wentian to admit it himself. As long as Qin Wentian said these words, the princess of the Evergreen Kingdom would probably give up on him. Huang Yudi was able to think of all these. How could he be stupid? You should know that these words are not only insulting me, but also insulting my family, Huang Yudi said. You should know that your words are not only insulting me, but they are also insulting Qing Heir. Qin Wentian replied, announcing that Qing Heir was the woman of the Prince of the Nine Emperors' immortal state, was a huge insult to Qing Heir. In that case, do you know that if this place wasn't the Sacred Academy, the moment you said those words earlier, you would already be a dead man? Huang Yudi acted as though he hadn't heard Qin Wentian's words, as he continued mumbling to himself. I only know that if this wasn't the Sacred Academy, I wouldn't have said those words. Because when you want me to say those words, you would be a dead man, Qin Wentian replied. Then there was another period of silence. Although it's forbidden to kill in the Sacred Institute, you'll still say what I want you to say in the end. After a moment of silence, Huang Yudi persisted. His tone was as resolute as ever. However, he knew that it was impossible for him to make Qin Wentian say those words. The people behind him also knew this, hence some of them stepped out. If I didn't see wrongly, your cultivation base should be at the 5th level of Immortal Foundation. I don't like to bully those with lower cultivation bases. Hence, it's better for someone else to act on my behalf first. Not only are you stupid, you are also shameless enough. Could it be that the person who injured my junior brother earlier wasn't you? To think that you can say such shameless words in front of so many people. I truly admire you. Qin Wentian laughed. Since you are already used to doing such things, why don't you do it yourself? In any case, you would have to act sooner or later. Even if you want me to act, I have to first see if you have the qualifications to do so. Huang Yudi continued. From the start till the end, he was as arrogant as ever. The people from the Thunder God Hall weren't in a hurry. Leiba quietly watched. Although he really wanted to personally use the cruelest lightning punishment on Qin Wentian, he believed that Qin Wentian wouldn't compromise so easily. In that case, Huang Yudi would let Qin Wentian understand how to humiliate someone, making him say the cruelest words. The words that Huang Yudi wanted Qin Wentian to say were naturally cruel. Because Qing was the woman that Qin Wentian liked, but he wanted Qin Wentian to personally admit that she was the woman of his royal brother. Even if it was so cruel, Qin Wentian still had to say it eventually. There were people from the 9 Emperors' immortal state who understood Huang Yudi's meaning. Hence, an expert stepped out. This expert was a 5th level Immortal Foundation genius. His cultivation base was the same as Qin Wentian. Just like what Huang Yudi said, if Qin Wentian wanted him to act, he should at least let him see if he was qualified or not. Since this expert from the 9 Emperors' immortal state could enter the Tiandao Sacred Academy, he naturally wouldn't be a mediocre character. On the contrary, he was extremely powerful. When he blasted out a punch, that majestic emperor aura seemed to be able to lacerate everything, exuding an unparalleled will, wanting to destroy Qin Wentian, who was standing there. And Qin Wentian stood there from the start till the end, as though he didn't see that violent punch. Chapter 1160. Qin Wentian's eyes were as calm as ever. He didn't see that punch because in his eyes, there was no such thing as a punch. Immortal light instantly enveloped Qin Wentian. The tyrannical king fist slammed into his body, causing the space around him to tremble violently. The sound of wind and thunder could be heard, terrifying to the extreme. Under this ferocious fist, Qin Wentian's body of flesh and blood seemed so tiny and inconsequential, as though it could be easily torn apart. Qin Wentian didn't shatter. He continued standing there, as steady as a boulder, as indestructible as a rock. Terrifying immortal light radiated from him, so dazzling that it almost blinded the eyes of others. So much so that the 9th prince felt his heart trembling. He was a heaven's chosen of the 9 emperors' immortal state, and was able to enter the Sacred Academy. From this, one could see what sort of character he was. His cultivation base was at the 5th level of Immortal Foundation, and his might was unparalleled. In addition, he was also very young and was naturally very arrogant. There was no need to doubt how powerful his fists were. But when he saw the calmness and indifference in Qin Wentian's eyes, The pride in his heart was slowly being destroyed. If he couldn't even move the body of his opponent, one could very well imagine how great the disparity in strength between the two of them was. It was simply insurmountable. Ha! A thunderous roar rang out, exploding the eardrums of the crowd. That expert from the Nine Emperors' immortal state was bathed in emperor light as he released his immortal foundation, resembling a human emperor. His fists shone with an incomparably resplendent light, as the shadows of human emperors ferociously slashed out. His eyes were incomparably sharp. He wanted nothing more than to destroy Qin Wentian. Even if he was defeated, he wouldn't allow himself to be defeated like this. Qin Wentian continued standing there. He was like a constellation in the night sky, radiating an incomparably resplendent light. Such a radiance caused the experts who blasted into him to feel a sense of inferiority. A deep sense of inferiority. Qin Wentian stretched out his hand. That palm seemed to contain a formless energy, containing a fearsome binding force. At this instant, that expert from the Nine Emperors' immortal empire didn't even have time to dodge. Just like that, his head was directly grabbed by Qin Wentian's hand and flung to the side. It was like tossing away a dog, so effortless. Qin Wentian didn't even injure his opponent. But precisely because of this, that expert felt a deep sense of humiliation. In Qin Wentian's eyes, he basically didn't exist. If not, Qin Wentian wouldn't have been so lazy to injure him. He stood there, staring at Qin Wentian with a blank expression. Was this the strength he was so proud of? Why couldn't he even withstand a single strike? Can you scram out now? Qin Wentian's gaze was so calm as he stared at Huang Jiudi. It was so calm that there were no fluctuations in his eyes. In fact, his eyes had never left Huang Jiudi. When had he ever faced that opponent earlier? Things are getting more and more interesting. The spectators all had faint smiles in their eyes when they saw this scene. If Qin Wentian merely defeated his opponent, they wouldn't find it interesting. But how could this be described with just the word defeated? That expert from the Nine Emperors' immortal state earlier didn't even have the qualifications to make Qin Wentian act. Naturally, no one knew how strong Qin Wentian was exactly, or how strong his true strength was. Maybe he could really fight against Huang Jiudi, as expected of an expert with a saint-grade immortal foundation. Many people still remembered the time when Qin Wentian entered the Sacred Academy over 30 years ago. At that time, Qin Wentian had stolen the limelight of everyone. Although they didn't feel that Qin Wentian was stronger than everyone, at the very least, he was the strongest in certain aspects. For example, astral souls and immortal foundation. Since this was the case, his combat prowess shouldn't be too disappointing. And the scene earlier proved this point. Qin Wentian was far stronger compared to other geniuses at the same cultivation level. Not only was he stronger by a little, he was on a completely different level. However, that person wasn't a match for Qin Wentian. His opponent now was Huang Jiudi who was said to be a match for everyone under the heavens. And as expected, at this moment, Huang Jiudi smiled. His smile was still as cold as before. He stared at Qin Wentian and spoke. Seems like you do indeed have the qualifications to make me act. However, you still have to say that sentence. He didn't know that Qin Wentian would never say that sentence. Leaving aside the fact that he was merely Huang Jiudi, even if he really was a match for everyone under the heavens, how could he make Qin Wentian say such a sentence? Scram out here. Qin Wentian emphasized his words. Could it be that those arrogant and conceited geniuses like to flaunt their strength in front of others? By saying that Qin Wentian had the qualifications to make him act, it was as if he was standing in the clouds and Qin Wentian was only qualified to fight with him. Huang Yudi's words showed his arrogance. Qin Wentian simply repeated the 3 words. Wasn't it also a kind of arrogance that disregarded everything? Even if his opponent was Huang Yudi, he still only had 3 simple words. Scram out here. Isn't it a bit too harsh? Among the crowd, beside the beautiful princess from the Shooting Sun Kingdom, a young man faintly spoke. He was a prince of the Shooting Sun Kingdom, and this woman was his royal sister. Naturally, she was the princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom. Both of them were supreme geniuses and within the Sacred Academy. How many of them were ordinary people? The princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom understood what her royal brother was referring to. Luring Qin Wentian here, to Qin Wentian, was truly too ruthless. As an immortal empire of the central regions, they had frequent dealings with the 9 emperors' immortal state. They naturally knew what sort of characters the 3 princes of the 9 emperors' immortal state were. Since Qin Wentian came here, he naturally had to face them. And his opponents were Huang Yudi and Huang Wudi. What awaited Qin Wentian was nothing but intense humiliation. Even if Qin Wentian could resolve the situation here, the price he had to pay would be unimaginable. What sort of situation would he have to face in the future? This was simply a dead end. This should have been the situation he had to face. I merely brought it forward. In such a situation, it would naturally be more intense. He helped that lewd monk. I'm making him face the challenge more directly. Why would royal brother feel that this is too ruthless? The princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom stared at her elder brother as she spoke. Her elder brother shrugged his shoulders and smiled. He was just casually speaking. He naturally wouldn't have any benevolence in his heart. The word benevolence was impossible for someone of his status to possess. With regards to this point, he had understood it since he was very young. It's just that I feel that it's a pity. The prince laughed. The beautiful eyes of the princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom flashed with a strange light. Seems like her royal brother had high hopes for Qin Wentian. If not, he wouldn't feel that it was a pity. It was a pity. Of course, it was a pity. Qin Wentian was likely to suffer an unprecedented blow. If he was forced to say something like that, how would he be able to hold on to his heart? If he didn't say it, he would probably be even more miserable. Of course, Huang Yudi wouldn't roll out. He walked out. Qin Wentian had repeatedly rolled out twice. If he didn't come out, he wouldn't be Huang Yudi. Huang Yudi, who walked out, stood proudly. His eyes were fixed on Qin Wentian, filled with pride. I've long recognized you. When we first entered the Sacred Academy, at that instant, the radiance radiating from you surpassed everyone else, to the point where I even compared myself to you. However, this thought didn't last for too long before it was forgotten by me. Although you radiated boundless radiance for an instant, like a goshawk soaring through the skies, in the eyes of the great rock, there should be no such thing as a goshawk. Because he was born to dominate the entire sky. Hence, if it wasn't for that princess, I think we wouldn't have had any interactions at all. As Huang Yudi spoke, his aura gushed forth. An incomparably powerful aura gushed forth as numerous shadows of human emperors revolved around him. At this instant, he was clad in a set of human emperor armor, resembling a true peerless human emperor, unrivaled in the world. 6 human emperors, each with a different attribute. Huang Yudi is truly a true heaven's chosen. He studied the 9 Grand Emperor canons since he was young, and was able to cultivate 6 of them. Other than that elder brother of his, there's no one in the younger generation of the 9 Emperors' immortal state who can be mentioned in the same breath as him. Even the powerful Huang Wudi couldn't compare to him. How powerful! The geniuses all stared at Huang Yudi. The 6 human emperors revolved around him, and in the middle, there was a near-perfect immortal foundation. Just the aura he exuded was so powerful that it caused the hearts of people to tremble. Although his cultivation base was only at the 6th level of immortal foundation, even geniuses at the 7th level of immortal foundation could feel their hearts palpitating when they sensed his aura. You said 2 sentences for me to scram out. In that case, I want you to repeat the same sentence 20 times. I believe this would be fairer. Huang Yudi laughed. He walked towards Qin Wentian step by step. The 6 human emperors shone with boundless light, abruptly erupting forth with 6-colored light that enveloped the entire space Qin Wentian was in. The 6-colored light converged together, instantly transforming into a destructive energy that wanted to destroy the entire space. A divine glow circulated around Qin Wentian, exuding boundless might. His perfect saint-grade immortal foundation gushed forth with a demonic might that caused the hearts of people to tremble. The shadow of a divine turtle appeared around him. This turtle was incomparably gigantic, encompassing the entire space around him. When the 6-colored light blasted over, the divine turtle's shadow trembled as it was corroded bit by bit, about to shatter apart. Huang Yudi was such a proud person. How could he not be powerful? If he wasn't powerful, how could he be praised as someone who would surpass Huang Wudi? Also, his cultivation base was at the 6th level of Immortal Foundation, higher than Qin Wentian. Usually when fighting against geniuses at the same level as him, just the 6-colored light radiating from him was enough to destroy them. In fact, he didn't even need to do anything. Strength was the capital that Huang Yudi was proud of. He naturally had the qualifications to be arrogant. Staring at the shadow of the divine turtle on Qin Wentian's body weakening, Huang Yudi laughed. As expected of someone who has the qualifications to make me act. If you were destroyed by the human emperor light, it would truly be too boring. Luckily you are not so weak that you would be killed by me. If not, I wonder if the rules of the Sacred Academy would punish me or not. As he spoke, the light grew even more intense. The shadow of the divine turtle was destroyed. Chapter 1161. Huang Yudi's eyes gleamed with sharpness. When the 6-colored human emperor light radiated forth, very few experts on the same level as him would be able to resist it. As for those with lower cultivation bases, there was no need to doubt them. Staring at the shadow of the divine tortoise being destroyed, Huang Yudi's gaze was filled with arrogance. He was Huang Yudi, an enemy under the heavens. Since his elder brother had said such a sentence before, there were some things he should do for his elder brother. He was very clear of how arrogant his elder brother was. Just when Huang Yudi was waiting for Qin Wentian's defense to be destroyed, Qin Wentian didn't think so much. His perfect saint-grade immortal foundation shone with boundless resplendent light, as the shadow of a divine tortoise manifested. After that, the light radiated out in all directions, enveloping him, forming a layer of supremely powerful defense. The 6-colored 9 Emperor immortal light destroyed a divine tortoise, but the shadow of the divine tortoise was reborn. The human emperor light continued to blast out unceasingly, destroying the divine tortoise. However, a new layer of defense was formed. The supremely powerful attack and supremely powerful defense were actually locked in a stalemate. In the airspace above the ancient palace, the destructive light enveloped an extremely large area. It was very hard to imagine that such a powerful attack was actually a 6th-level Immortal Foundation expert fighting against a 5th-level Immortal Foundation expert. I really don't understand what qualifications you have to be arrogant. Qin Wentian calmly stared at his opponent. Even if his opponent's cultivation base was higher than his, even if his opponent had the Emperor Light, he had a perfect saint-grade Immortal Foundation as well as powerful demonic arts. If his opponent wanted to destroy him just by relying on his immortal foundation alone, he would have wasted all his years of cultivation. Not bad, you do have some strength. But if you think you can be arrogant in front of me just because of this, aren't you overestimating yourself a little too much? Huang Yudi stepped out. The Emperor light radiating from him was as strong as ever, capable of destroying everything. If it wasn't for Qin Wentian's tyrannical defense, ordinary people wouldn't even have the qualifications to stand here and talk to him. Qi. The 6-colored Emperor immortal light congregated together as the light from the immortal foundation shone brightly, even more dazzling than sunlight, blinding the eyes of others. A human emperor sword manifested from the light of the human emperor appeared, exuding a feeling that it could exterminate all evils in the world. Even before the sword arrived, the sword might radiating from the human emperor's sword had already penetrated the shadow of the divine turtle. This sword was the human sovereign sword, and the light it emitted was the essence of the human sovereign immortal light. It was extremely tyrannical. The human sovereign sword descended upon the space covered by the black turtle, illuminating the world of starlight, destroying the defense of the black turtle around Qin Wentian. Huang Wudi was very strong. There was no need to doubt this point. If not, how could ordinary 6th-level Immortal Foundation geniuses stand a chance against Qin Wentian? A sword flew over with the speed of lightning, breaking apart the shadow of the divine turtle, and shooting towards Qin Wentian. That beam of sword light enveloped Qin Wentian, destroying the space around him. There was nowhere for him to escape. But Qin Wentian didn't know how to flee. He transformed into a divine form, radiating light that was comparable to that of a mythological existence. He chanted incantations as gigantic ancient characters containing law might blasted out. His entire immortal foundation transformed into an incomparably gigantic ancient character. The word suppress. The might of this word suppress was unparalleled, containing the law energy of the great Tao. Boundless suppression characters radiated from within, sweeping out in all directions, suppressing everything. The terrifying human sovereign sword slashed over, humming noisily, but it was actually suppressed by the boundless suppression of the ancient characters before Qin Wentian. Unable to move, the emperor light radiating from the sword was forcibly sealed away. No matter how resplendent it was still suppressed. Huang Yudi frowned, his eyes gleaming with sharpness. How powerful was he? Although his immortal foundation was inferior to Qin Wentian, being a 5th-tier king-grade immortal foundation, Huang Yudi didn't feel that his immortal foundation could be compared to Qin Wentian's. He cultivated the 9 emperor's arts and had 6 emperor codices, transforming them into astral souls of different attributes that resonated with each other to form his current immortal foundation. How perfect was his immortal foundation? If not, he wouldn't be able to unleash such overwhelming might. The human sovereign sword shone with a brilliant light. He pointed his finger forward as the human sovereign sword gleamed with light, wanting to cleave apart everything, wanting to kill Qin Wentian. This human sovereign sword wasn't a beam of sword light. It was a true condensed sword that contained boundless might, and was under Huang Yudi's control. The domineering human emperor sword was as lofty as Huang Yudi, radiating a resplendent light as it exuded an unparalleled might. Piercing sounds rang out as the human emperor sword actually broke apart a fearsome suppression character, flying out from the side, humming as it spun in the air before vanishing from sight. In the next instant, the human emperor sword shone with a brilliant light as it directly appeared behind Qin Wentian, slashing towards him. The speed of the sword was terrifying to the extreme. Even if Qin Wentian used the suppression character to defend himself, he wouldn't have enough time. What a fast sword, what a powerful sword. Even geniuses at the 7th level felt their hearts trembling. They faintly felt that if they were in the shoes of this sword, it would be extremely difficult for them to defend against it. It was simply too powerful. Before this, the human sovereign sword flashed through the air with a speed so fast that it disappeared from the eyes of the spectators. From this, one could very well imagine how fast it was. There was no way to evade this sword. Just as it was about to pierce through Qin Wentian's body, the light from Qin Wentian's body flickered as the human sovereign sword pierced through Qin Wentian. However, the silhouette of Qin Wentian gradually dissipated, leaving behind only an illusory afterimage. Qin Wentian dodged this terrifying sword strike. His silhouette appeared in the air as a brilliant shadow of a golden-winged great rock appeared, enveloping him. At this instant, he transformed into a great rock, using the unparalleled speed of the rock race to evade this sword strike. Huang Yudi stared ahead as his eyes gleamed with sharpness. He thought of Jia Nantian, who defeated him in the sky-connecting realm back then. Qin Wentian was actually able to use the treasured art of the golden-winged great rock, unleashing such terrifying speed to evade this unparalleled sword strike. The human sovereign sword returned to its original position, floating in the air above Huang Yudi. Its radiance was as resplendent as ever. His countenance was like lightning, staring at Qin Wentian as the battle intent in his eyes grew increasingly intense. The eyes of the experts in the surroundings gleamed with a dazzling light. Qin Wentian was actually able to fight against Huang Yudi to such an extent. Even the human sovereign sword was unable to injure him. Seems like this genius with a saint-grade immortal foundation truly had extraordinary capabilities. I've never fought against someone with a lower cultivation base than me for so long. No wonder you are so arrogant. Seems like you do have some capabilities. Huang Yudi floated in the air as he spoke to Qin Wentian. He was still as brazen and as arrogant as ever. The people of the immortal realms all think that the ultimate arts have been lost. However, how could the 9 sovereign canon of my 9 emperors' immortal state be inferior to the ultimate arts of the ancient emperors? Today, being able to see 6 human sovereign swords, you should feel proud and honored. Huang Yudi continued. After which, his immortal foundation shone with a brilliant light as 6 human sovereign swords manifested, floating in the air, radiating supreme might. The 6 human sovereign swords all shone with a resplendent light as they revolved frenziedly, causing the heavens and earth to lose their color. I've never seen someone who speaks in such a disgusting manner before. Jun Mengchen was so angry that his aura fluctuated. This Huang Yuti didn't seem to have any advantage from the start to the end when fighting against his senior brother Qin Wentian. Not only that, his cultivation base was higher than Qin Wentian, but from his words, it was as though it was an honor for him to fight against Huang Yuti. This caused him to feel so disgusted that he wanted to vomit. I also have no way to understand. Why would such a fool appear in the 9 Emperors' immortal state? Qin Wentian's silhouette flashed as he transformed into a true golden-winged rock. Before the lecture in the Sacred Academy, he underwent the baptism of demon blood in the sacred ground and battled against many saint beasts. How great of an improvement was this! He cultivated the 8 demonic treasured arts and had boundless might. In addition to his combat experience, he was able to perfectly fuse the various innate techniques together. If he transformed into a rock, he would be a true rock. His hand of God would be able to unleash boundless might from his entire body, and he would have an indestructible divine body. Even when compared to a pure-blooded golden-winged rock, he wouldn't be the slightest bit inferior. A golden bolt of lightning streaked across the sky, heading straight for Huang Yuti. This caused everyone to be astonished. Qin Wentian actually took the initiative to attack Huang Yuti. How audacious was he! You're courting death. Huang Yuti coldly snorted. 6 human sovereign swords burst forth at the same time. The terrifying light from the human sovereign swords destroyed everything as they headed straight for Qin Wentian, who had transformed into a rock. Qin Wentian's speed transformed into a golden bolt of lightning. It was too fast, even faster than the light from the human sovereign swords. His wings flickered with a dazzling brilliance, wrapping around his body. When the light from the human sovereign swords landed on him, they were actually unable to break through his defense. One could very well imagine how terrifying his defense was. The 6 revolving human sovereign swords sealed the space, causing the body of the golden-winged great rock to be under a terrifying pressure. The human sovereign sword slashed out. The golden-winged great rock opened its beak and spat out words of suppression and destruction. At the same time, its terrifying claws slashed out. In an instant, numerous terrifying great rocks slashed out with their claws, aiming for the Emperor swords. These attacks were naturally unleashed using the power of God's hand, causing the entire space to tremble. The terrifying attacks contained boundless might. The 6 Emperor swords hummed as they emitted an intense vibrating sound. Each and every one of them caused the space around them to be lacerated. However, with a flash of light, the body of the golden-winged great rock had already vanished. When the human sovereign swords were bound, the terrifying body of the golden-winged great rock appeared before Huang Yuti. His claws slashed out as an ancient character for suppression appeared, enveloping Huang Yuti's body. The current Qin Wentian could use all kinds of abilities to perfection. Qin Wentian's attack could be said to be extremely fast. With the ancient character for suppression, there was no way for Huang Yuti to resist. However, Huang Yuti was ultimately not an ordinary character. He instantly gave up on the human sovereign swords and enveloped his body with the human sovereign swords. He condensed 6 human sovereign imprints and blasted out brazenly, causing the heavens and earth to rumble. The attacks of the golden-winged great rock were incomparably violent, directly colliding with Qin Wentian's attacks. He didn't evade at all. His speed was shocking, and after the first attack, he immediately unleashed his second attack. He actually unleashed the might of a divine elephant, crushing everything in his path. Huang Yuti roared, unleashing his human sovereign immortal might to the extreme, frenziedly defending against Qin Wentian's explosive attacks. However, Qin Wentian's attacks were extremely tyrannical. Time and time again, Huang Yuti was forced to retreat unceasingly. His entire body trembled as his blood and qi churned wildly. Boom! Finally, a deafening sound rang out. Huang Yuti was struck as he coughed out fresh blood. A golden claw descended from the sky, directly grabbing onto his body as it was dragged downwards. Rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly. The ancient palace was crumbling apart. The violent scene caused the experts of the 9 Emperors' immortal state to step out in shock. However, They only saw Qin Wentian hovering in the air. His sharp claws directly penetrated into Huang Yudi's body. It was as though as long as his claws slashed down, he would be able to cripple Huang Yudi's immortal foundation. The experts of the 9 Emperors' immortal state involuntarily halted their steps as they stared at Qin Wentian. Arrogant to such an extent. Do you really think that you are invincible under the heavens? I really want to know how you are feeling right now. Do you feel that your words earlier were extremely disgusting? Qin Wentian stared at Huang Yudi, who was covered in blood, as he calmly asked. Huang Yudi roared in rage, only to see Qin Wentian's claws transforming into palms that directly smashed onto Huang Yudi's face. A crisp smacking sound rang out, so clear and distinct. Chapter 1162. Qin Wentian's voice rang out in the air. In addition to Huang Yudi's earlier arrogance and disregard for everything, it was truly an irony. Huang Yudi, the crown prince of the 9 Emperors' immortal state, was a match for everyone under the heavens. He had a cultivation base at the 6th level of immortal foundation, and his earlier words were like looking down on everything, treating Qin Wentian as an ant-like character, wanting Qin Wentian to personally say that Princess Qing'e had nothing to do with him, and was the woman of his brother Huang Yudi. How great of a humiliation was this to Qin Wentian? He even felt that it was an honor for Qin Wentian to fight against him. Everyone knew that he was Huang Yudi. Hence, no matter how arrogant he was, no matter how condescending his words were, everyone was already used to it. They felt that no matter how arrogant his words were, as long as it came from the mouth of Huang Yudi, no matter how unreasonable it would still be logical. Because he was strong. He was the crown prince of the 9 Emperors' immortal state, Huang Yudi. However, all of these were based on how strong Huang Yudi was. Everything, when Huang Yudi was defeated, wasn't even worth a mention. In fact, it became an incomparably thick mockery for Huang Yudi. Those incomparably arrogant words from before were like a slap to his face just now. It was so ear-piercing. He was Huang Yudi, a match for everyone under the heavens. But at this moment, he was captured by Qin Wentian, coughing out blood and even having a palm print on his face. Was Huang Yudi still Huang Yudi? At this moment, the only thing left for the incomparably arrogant Huang Yudi was boundless humiliation. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, he was so arrogant earlier, yet he was defeated by Qin Wentian, who was a level lower than him. How would he feel now? Would he feel disgusted by the arrogant words he spat out earlier? He actually lost. The spectators were still in a daze. Qin Wentian jumped a realm and defeated Huang Yudi, who was said to be invincible under the heavens. Although he had a perfect saint-grade immortal foundation, the ending of this battle still caused everyone to feel a deep shock. This was especially so when they saw the power Qin Wentian unleashed earlier. Each of his attacks contained the innate techniques of greater demons, and all of them contained terrifying might. It was as though Qin Wentian himself was a true greater demon, and those innate techniques were part of his innate talent. The contrast between Huang Yudi's arrogance and the current outcome was too stark. Boom boom boom. Numerous terrifying auras gushed forth. The experts of the 9 Emperors' immortal state instantly moved, moving towards Qin Wentian. This was especially so for Huang Yudi's brother, Huang Wudi. Right now, his cultivation base was at the 9th level of immortal foundation. How terrifying was his aura! Let him go. Huang Wudi spoke, and his voice seemed to carry an indisputable tone. Scram. Qin Wentian inclined his head and glanced at the experts here. His eyes, which were now in the form of a golden-winged roc, gleamed with incomparable loftiness. His sharp claws once again pierced towards Huang Yudi, causing Huang Yudi to howl in pain. Everyone could see Qin Wentian grabbing onto Huang Yudi's immortal foundation. As long as he willed it, he could shatter Huang Yudi's immortal foundation, crippling this supreme genius of the 9 Emperors' immortal state. Huang Yudi's body trembled slightly. His eyes gleamed with a blood-red light as he stared fixedly at Qin Wentian. He was defeated. He was actually defeated. If you dare to touch me, you will die a graveless death. Huang Yudi stared at Qin Wentian as he spoke. Are you starting to use the power behind your back to suppress me? You are incomparably arrogant, bullying my junior brother who is 2 levels lower than you, yet you are still so proud of it. I truly feel ashamed for you. Qin Wentian's lofty eyes turned cold to the extreme. How pathetic. The rules of the Sacred Academy state that no one can kill or cripple an expert who joined the Sacred Academy. You won't be able to do anything to me. You will die in my hands sooner or later. Huang Yudi stared at Qin Wentian, the killing intent in his eyes terrifying to the extreme. I really don't know why you still dare to be so arrogant even at this moment. Idiot. Qin Wentian slapped out again, ruthlessly slapping Huang Yudi's face. The sounds of slapping rang out unceasingly, and with every slap, a bloody palm print would appear on Huang Yudi's face, until his entire face turned red and swollen. Argh. Huang Yudi roared in rage. He doesn't dare to touch me. Capture him. Boom. Huang Yudi turned ashen. He took a step forward as a terrifying might gushed forth. Boom. A fearsome destructive might enveloped Huang Yudi. Qin Wentian's terrifying claws grabbed onto Huang Yudi's immortal foundation as the destructive might ravaged it. It felt like as long as he exerted a little more strength, Huang Yudi would become a cripple. Do you guys want to gamble? Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at Huang Yudi as he coldly spoke. Huang Yudi halted his steps once more. The light radiating from him was so bright that it could blind the eyes of people. The rules of the Sacred Academy, I bet you wouldn't dare to defy it. Huang Yudi coldly spoke, yet he only saw Qin Wentian laughing uproariously. Wouldn't dare to defy it? Do you still remember what Huang Yudi said earlier? In this world, there's no logic to speak of. He is strong, he is the logic, he is the rule. He wanted me to say that after he defeated me, he would make me suffer the greatest humiliation. But now, I'm the one who defeated him. The rules of the Sacred Academy are set by humans. I believe the Sacred Academy has seen everything that happened here. In that case, since I've won, even if I cripple him, what reason does the Sacred Academy have to act against me? Even if you dare to touch him, you should also understand what the consequences are. Huang Yudi coldly spoke. Before this, the White Tiger people were as arrogant as you all. They thought that I was just a lowly human, and that they were incomparably arrogant, born to be kings. Only they could humiliate me and I couldn't resist. But in the end, I killed 2 white tigers and roasted their meat in front of the White Tiger people. You can imagine how much the White Tiger people hate me, but I'm still alive and well, standing here. I even dared to roast a white tiger and eat it. Tell me, do you think I dare to cripple him or not? Qin Wentian spoke. Huang Yudi was still struggling. His silhouette flashed as he rushed into the ancient palace below, smashing Huang Yudi's body into it. His incomparably sharp claws were still locked onto Huang Yudi's immortal foundation. Staring at the berserk Qin Wentian as well as his arrogant words, it was completely different from the earlier Qin Wentian. At this moment, it was like he had transformed into the incomparably arrogant Huang Yudi. At this moment, only then did everyone see this young man clearly. This young man who possessed a perfect saint-grade immortal foundation. It was rumored that in the Sacred Academy where the White Tiger people resided, there was someone who had a conflict with the White Tiger people and stepped onto the life and death arena. There was a human expert who killed 2 white tigers and roasted their meat in front of the White Tiger people. This was something that happened many years ago, but they could still remember this rumor in the sky-connecting realm. Only now did they know that the young man who roasted white tiger meat was none other than Qin Wentian. He dared to roast white tiger meat. In that case, would he dare to cripple Huang Yudi? Would the people of the 9 emperors' immortal state dare to gamble with him? Among the crowd, Leba undoubtedly understood Qin Wentian very well. Back then after the incident with Chu Qingyi, he had been searching for Qin Wentian. He inquired about many things about Qin Wentian and knew that in the Sacred Academy where there were many demonic beasts, Qin Wentian feasted on white tiger meat. He also knew that there was a powerful clan following Qin Wentian. But he didn't care. He was Leba. Although Qin Wentian was arrogant, he wasn't qualified to be his enemy. Today, Qin Wentian defeated Huang Yudi in front of him, and in such a domineering manner. Although Leba hated Qin Wentian's strength, he revealed a sense of excitement from the bottom of his heart. If this was the case, the feud between Qin Wentian and the 9 emperors' immortal state would definitely be formed. Moreover, based on Qin Wentian's personality, Huang Yudi wouldn't be able to get away so easily. Then, the feud between them would definitely be irresolvable. What do you want? Huang Wuti stared at Qin Wentian and said, Scram. Qin Wentian spat out a word, and told the people of the 9 Emperors' immortal state to scram. Arranged battle? The experts of the 9 Emperors' immortal state and the Thunder God Hall obviously wanted to suppress Jun Mingchen's group. What kind of arranged battle was this? If it was a real arranged battle, it would be a one-on-one battle with people of the same realm. However, previously, Huang Yuti attacked Jun Mingchen and forced Jun Mingchen to say that sentence. Was this considered a arranged battle? The people of the 9 Emperors' immortal state didn't care about the rules. They believed that strength was the rule. In that case, Qin Wentian didn't care about the rules either, and told them to scram. Your junior brother and many of your sect members are here. If you touch him, I can also cripple some of them. Huang Wuti stared at Qin Wentian. Seems like your royal elder brother doesn't care about you at all. Your pride doesn't seem to be that important. Qin Wentian stared at Huang Yuti and laughed. He stretched out his palm as destructive energy gushed forth violently. Huang Yuti screamed in pain as he felt his immortal foundation trembling. He was so frightened that his entire body started to tremble. His eyes were filled with deep terror. Cracks appeared on his immortal foundation, and it seemed like it would collapse at any moment. No, Huang Yuti roared. He was the supreme genius of the 9 Emperors' immortal state, Huang Yuti. If he was crippled, he would become a pitiful worm in the 9 Emperors' immortal state. No one would even pity him. A cripple didn't have the qualifications to be part of the royal clan, especially the royal clan of the 9 Emperors' immortal state. Stop! Huang Wuti roared. Qin Wentian naturally wouldn't stop. The destructive energy continued to wreak havoc. He inclined his head and coldly stared at Huang Wuti. Against his enemies he had no fear, only ruthlessness. In theory, Huang Wuti naturally could capture Jun Mingchen to threaten Qin Wentian. But that was only in theory. No one would really dare to risk Huang Yuti's immortal foundation. Although Huang Yuti was crippled, he would definitely become a marginalized character in the immortal empire. Those who could save Huang Yuti, but chose not to do so would also be punished severely. Let's go. Huang Wuti compromised. He stared at Qin Wentian. Let's hope he is safe and sound. If not, if the rules of the Sacred Academy don't punish you, you and your friends will have to pay for what they did to you. After speaking, Huang Wuti waved his hand and led the experts of the 9 Emperors' immortal state away. He was truly decisive. Staring at the departing experts of the 9 Emperors' immortal state, Huang Yuti stared at Qin Wentian. Release me. Release you? Qin Wentian stared at Huang Yuti and laughed. Do you still remember the words you wanted me to say earlier? In that case, you should at least tell everyone that you, Huang Yuti, were wrong. Qin Wentian didn't allow Huang Yuti to say anything too harsh. Although he really wanted to cripple Huang Yuti's immortal foundation right now, since this was the Sacred Academy, he still had to abide by some rules. Naturally, at the very least, he should consider Jun Mingchen and the others. After all, not everyone from the 9 Emperors' immortal state was trash. But he believed that for someone as arrogant as Huang Yuti, admitting his mistake was something he would never forget. Chapter 1163. Huang Yuti's entire body was trembling, not only because of the pain, but also because of the boundless humiliation he felt. Qin Wentian wanted him to admit his mistakes. As a supreme genius of the 9 Emperors' immortal state, when has anyone ever made him admit his mistakes before? He, Huang Yuti, how could he be wrong? He was destined to be extraordinary from birth, and had experienced all sorts of tempering his temperament. His entire life seemed to be perfect and flawless. Once he admitted his mistakes, would he still be himself? Today, the humiliation of this defeat was like a knife cutting into his body. If he admitted his mistakes, it would be like using a sharp sword to scrape his wounds, leaving behind an unforgettable scar. Would he still have the conviction to pursue that supreme realm? Would he still be able to pursue the path of an ancient emperor? No, he, Huang Yuti, wouldn't admit his mistakes. Qin Wentian wouldn't dare to kill him. The humiliation today, I will engrave it in my heart. Also, my 9 Emperor's immortal state has already admitted defeat and retreated from this place. You actually want me to admit my mistakes? Is this even possible? Huan Jiudi coldly spoke. Is it not possible? Qin Wentian's eyes were as cold as ever. Destructive energy ravaged Huan Jiudi's body, crushing his immortal foundation. As long as he willed it, he could destroy Huan Jiudi's immortal foundation. Since you are defeated, you will have to pay the price for your arrogance. Announce to everyone that you are wrong. Qin Wentian's voice was like a sharp blade cutting into Huan Jiudi's body. The destructive energy howled ferociously as Huan Jiudi's immortal foundation was enveloped by it. There were actually signs that it was about to shatter. If his immortal foundation shattered, Huan Jiudi would become a cripple. Just because you want me to admit my mistakes, you want to go against the rules of the Sacred Academy and offend the 9 Emperor's immortal state to death? Huan Jiudi roared. I don't believe you would do something so crazy. Boom. An even stronger destructive might gushed forth. Qin Wentian's sharp claws lifted Huan Jiudi up into the air as screams of agony rang out. Huan Jiudi's immortal foundation was on the verge of shattering. Cracking sounds rang out unceasingly as his immortal energy dissipated unceasingly. The destructive might left thousands of holes in his immortal foundation. I'll only give you 3 breaths of time. Qin Wentian said indifferently. How dare you? Huan Jiudi roared. His eyes gleamed with a blood-red light as the destructive might grew even more intense. Huan Jiudi was truly terrified now. He could already sense cracks appearing on his immortal foundation. As long as Qin Wentian increased his destructive might slightly, this supreme genius would become a cripple. Everyone felt their hearts trembling when they saw this scene. This Qin Wentian was truly crazy. He defeated Huan Jiudi and humiliated him so miserably. Now he even wanted Huan Jiudi to admit that he was wrong. He wanted to crush Huan Jiudi's mental state, causing Huan Jiudi to be unable to recover from this setback. Naturally, based on the arrogance Huan Jiudi displayed earlier, as well as the words he wanted Qin Wentian to say, Qin Wentian's actions weren't overboard. Because if he was defeated, Huan Jiudi would treat him even more cruelly. What was shocking was Qin Wentian's insane courage. This place was the Sacred Academy and the Sacred Academy had its rules. As for Huan Jiudi, he was a supreme genius of the 9 Emperor's immortal state. He was the younger brother of Huang Wudi, the younger brother of that person. Speak. An ice-cold voice rang out once more. After that, everyone only heard Huan Jiudi using all the strength in his body to roar. I was wrong. This roar seemed to express all the humiliation he felt. As the sound of his voice faded, the destructive energy in Qin Wentian's hands vanished. However, Huan Jiudi's countenance was as pale as dead ashes. The arrogant and conceited Huan Jiudi was defeated so miserably. Not only that, he had to endure such humiliation, and he had to say these 3 words. The him now, was he still the invincible Huan Jiudi in the world? Qin Wentian's sharp claws loosened, and he reverted to his original appearance. Huan Jiudi's body fell from the sky above the ancient palace, and let out a dull thud. Not long ago, Huan Jiudi was thrown onto the ground by Qin Wentian like a pig or a dog. In addition to everything that happened before, everything that happened in this short period of time was probably enough to become a nightmare for Huan Jiudi for the rest of his life. If he was unable to pull himself together, Huang Yudi would no longer be the Huang Yudi who was a match for everyone under the heavens. He would no longer have the confidence and courage he had in the past. His confidence and his pride would all be crushed in this battle. However, in Qin Wentian's eyes, it was as if Huan Jiudi didn't exist at all. He raised his head and looked at the expert from the Thunder God Palace, Leba. At this moment he wouldn't look for Leba to fight. Although the people from the 9 Emperor's immortal state had already retreated, they could return at any time. Furthermore, their formation didn't have the advantage. Hence, he would temporarily remember this grudge. Back then, you must have been as arrogant as Huan Jiudi. However, I hope you will remember the tragedy that Huan Jiudi suffered today. One day, when I really want to face you, your ending might be even worse than Huan Jiudi's, Qin Wentian said indifferently. Then he looked at Jun Mingchen and the others. Let's go. As soon as he finished speaking, the group of people left without any reluctance. The so-called battle was just one battle, the battle between Qin Wentian and Huang Jiudi. However, just this battle alone was enough to shock everyone. The might of thunder shone on Leiba's body, as if it wanted to destroy the void. His eyes contained terrifying lightning as he stared at Qin Wentian. If it was before this battle, he wouldn't care about Qin Wentian's words at all. However, in this battle, Qin Wentian's insanity and indifference were enough to make people remember him. Even someone as strong as Leiba's faith was shaken. Just like before, he thought that Huang Jiudi would make Qin Wentian suffer an unforgettable humiliation. However, the ending was completely opposite. For such a person, even if it was Leiba, he wouldn't be able to ignore his threat. Boom! A bolt of thunder slashed through the air. Leiba's proud figure grew even more imposing as an intense battle intent flashed in his eyes. Since he had no way to ignore Qin Wentian's threat, he might as well destroy this threat before it matured. Although Qin Wentian was already very strong and could defeat Huang Jiudi, he was still Leiba, the son of the Thunder God. Leiba was at the 8th level of Immortal Foundation. No matter how strong Qin Wentian's combat prowess was, it was impossible for him to win against him. To think that someone with a perfect Immortal Foundation would actually be even more arrogant compared to Huang Jiudi. Everyone mused silently as they stared at the departing back of Qin Wentian. Although before this, Huang Jiudi was incomparably arrogant and Qin Wentian was only passively resisting. But after the dust settled, everyone could sense what sort of character Qin Wentian was. Royal sister, it seems like it's not like what you've imagined. Several experts from the Shooting Sun Kingdom stood together. That prince spoke to the princess who brought Qin Wentian here. The beautiful eyes of the princess from the Shooting Sun Kingdom flickered. She was truly taken aback. Not only did Qin Wentian not suffer the humiliation she had imagined, he even managed to humiliate Huang Jiudi before leaving unscathed. However, this matter was far from over. What would be waiting for Qin Wentian next? Since he is fine, the grudge between me and him shall be written off. From this battle, not only did I see his strength, I can also see how much he cares about the Evergreen Princess. However, that simple sentence spoken by that elder brother of Huang Jiudi was extremely heavy. Even Leiba chose to give up. What Qin Wentian has to face isn't as simple as another Huang Jiudi. After the princess of the Shooting Sun Kingdom spoke, she turned and departed. Since she said that she brought Qin Wentian here, the grudge between them had been settled. Naturally, the debt between them was cleared. After Qin Wentian and the others left, they sped towards the sky-connecting realm in the center of the 4 sacred academies. Right now, this sky-connecting realm was the passageway to the other sacred academies. Qing'er wasn't in this sacred academy. In the sacred academy Qing'er was in, there was a misty ancient mountain peak. On the peak, a young man could be seen sitting in the air. Around him, droplets of rain cascaded down. The young man sat there, allowing the raindrops to land on him, yet they had no way to wet his robes. The ancient peak was incomparably quiet. There were actually very few people here. At this moment, several powerful silhouettes flickered as they flew over. They merely stood at the boundary of the ancient peak before stopping, staring at the raindrops before them with a deep sense of trepidation in their eyes. These figures quietly stood there. Nobody dared to disturb the cultivation of that young man. Even in the sacred academy, they were all incomparably powerful cultivators, able to summon the wind and summon the rain, radiating an emperor-grade immortal light. After a few hours, the place became quiet. There was no sound at all. Those people just stood there and watched quietly. What's the matter? Finally, a voice rang out from the ancient peak. It was none other than the young man sitting in the air who spoke. So it turned out that those geniuses who came here had waited for several hours, waiting for this young man to take the initiative to speak. Given their attitudes, it was as though as long as the young man didn't speak, they would never disturb him, even if it was something extremely important. Prince D was injured in another sacred academy. One of them spoke. The young man furrowed his brows, as though he was unhappy. This place was the Tiandao Sacred Academy and Huang Yudi was his younger brother. Although Huang Yudi was rarely defeated and rarely injured, it was normal for him to be injured when he fought with others. Was there a need to disturb him for such a minor matter? As he frowned, the raindrops in the air abruptly sped up, gleaming with sharpness. Those people could sense the unhappiness of the young man. They hurriedly spoke. Back then you said that the daughter of the evergreen immortal emperor wasn't bad. For this, Prince D felt that this was some sort of hint. He wanted the man who liked the princess to admit that she was your woman. The frown on the young man's face deepened. Not bad means not bad. What is he thinking? It's fine if he wants others to admit it. But the problem is, why did he still lose? Isn't he just seeking his own humiliation? The young man didn't seem to care about what Huang Yudi did, or if he was injured. What he cared about was that Huang Yudi had done such a thing. Why was he still defeated? That young man was none other than the person who possessed the saint-grade immortal foundation, Qin Wentian of the immortal Qianbian Gate. His cultivation base is at the 5th level, and he defeated Prince D. Not only that, he even humiliated Prince D, forcing him to admit his mistakes. That person spoke. Although the young man was frowning, he didn't have much of a reaction. After a moment of silence he spoke. It's fine for him to be defeated as well. He can temper himself well, and make a breakthrough in his state of heart. As for that person who possessed a saint-grade immortal foundation, since he was able to defeat Prince D, it's no wonder he dared to be so arrogant. It's just that to be jealous of a woman, this saint-grade immortal foundation is truly a waste. As he spoke, he slowly stood up. At this instant, the raindrops transformed into incomparably sharp swords that rained down on the young man, terrifying to the extreme. However, immortal light shone around the young man as he leisurely strolled through the rain of swords. When the rain of swords slammed into him, they directly passed through him, unable to injure him at all. The spectators on the ancient peak were all stunned when they saw this scene. But when they thought about who this young man was, they understood. Prince D's misunderstanding caused many people in the Sacred Academy to misunderstand your words. Do you need an explanation? A person asked. Why do I need an explanation? The eyes of the young man flashed, gleaming with sharpness that was even sharper than swords. There's already someone who wanted to humiliate the people of the 9 emperors' immortal state. In that case, let's turn this misunderstanding into reality. The young man calmly spoke. Chapter 1164. Before the young man exited the ancient peak, the news had yet to spread to the other sacred academies. In the sky-connecting realm, at the location of the sky-connecting immortal rock, the Supreme Might rankings attracted the attention of many experts every day. On this heavenspan immortal rock, the replacement of each figure symbolized the replacement of the heavenspan world's most terrifying figure. At this moment, the sky-connecting immortal rock suddenly shone with a resplendent immortal light, causing the eyes of many figures on the Tongtian Heaven Stone to turn sharp as they stared at the rock. A bright light shone from the rock. A new member of the Supreme Might rankings had appeared. Numerous gazes turned to the rock with solemn expressions. After that, at a certain location on the sky-connecting immortal rock, a figure gradually grew dimmer and dimmer. How is this possible? Many people had solemn expressions on their faces when they saw this, feeling shock in their hearts. This dimming figure was actually a supreme genius named Li Yufeng. What sort of character was Li Yufeng? He was a supreme genius from the 100 Refinements sect, a major power in the northern regions. He was given the title of Sage Child by the elders of the sect, and the status of a Sage Child was extremely high. Only the leading characters of a generation would have such qualifications. Li Yufeng was only at the 5th level of Immortal Foundation, but he was already given the title of Sage Child. From this, one could very well imagine how outstanding he was. Naturally, this place was the Tiandao Sacred Academy. No matter how outstanding Li Yufeng's status was, geniuses were as common as the clouds in the Tiandao Sacred Academy. Since he could appear on the sky-connecting immortal rankings, it was naturally due to his extraordinary strength. In the northern regions, the 100 Refinements sect and the Dark North Immortal Dynasty had a deep grudge. However, there was a princess of the Dark North Immortal Dynasty who fell in love with this sage child of the 100 Refinements sect. The two of them became lovers, and this princess was the younger sister of Princess Kitamura. Her status was extraordinary and she herself was also an outstanding character. After she entered the Tiandao Sacred Academy, she had many pursuers. Once, there was an extremely powerful pursuer who was at the 7th level of Immortal Foundation. However, that pursuer fought against Li Yufeng in the Sky Connecting Realm and was forcibly refined to death by Li Yufeng, shocking the entire Sky Connecting Realm. In addition to Li Yufeng's status in the 100 Refinements sect, none of his love rivals dared to antagonize him. His name was engraved on the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock in the Sky Connecting Realm. The figures on the Supreme Might rankings weren't the ones with the highest combat prowess, but they were definitely the most outstanding characters in their respective cultivation realms. But now, such a powerful existence like Li Yufeng actually dimmed in comparison to the rest of the Supreme Might rankings. Who would be able to replace Li Yufeng with a cultivation base at the 5th level? The eyes of everyone stared at the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock. This was especially so for those who had personally witnessed Li Yufeng's domineering battle back then. All of them felt that this was unbelievable. They didn't believe that there would be someone who could replace Li Yufeng at the 5th level. Li Yufeng's silhouette finally vanished, transforming into nothingness. A brand new silhouette appeared, imprinting itself onto the Supreme Might rankings. This was a young man with long black hair that draped over his shoulders. He radiated a supreme divine glow, like he had the body of a divinity. He was handsome and exuded an unparalleled aura, officially replacing Li Yufeng. Who is this man? He looks somewhat familiar. What qualifications does he have to replace Li Yufeng? Someone was unconvinced. What sort of expert was Li Yufeng? How could there be someone more outstanding than him at the 5th level? Could it be that Li Yufeng's cultivation base has risen? Someone mused. That doesn't seem right. Li Yufeng hasn't been at the 5th level for too long, and the Supreme Might rankings wasn't too far away from him. It's impossible for his cultivation base to rise again. It's that young man at the Saint Great Immortal Foundation. He's the male lead of the incident with Chu Qingyi. Someone spoke. At this moment, a dazzling immortal light radiated from the Supreme Might rankings. Li Yufeng has been replaced by someone else. An intense light flashed in the Sky Connecting Realm as countless figures sped towards the direction of the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock. After that, when they saw that handsome young man, there were some who doubted and some who exclaimed in admiration. A figure hurried over from outside the Sky Connecting Realm. When he saw the change in the rankings, he spoke. The rules of the Sacred Academy have changed. As expected, the Supreme Might rankings would be able to sense everything that happens outside the Sky Connecting Realm. And as expected, Qin Wentian has already entered the Sky Connecting Realm. This person had personally witnessed the battle between Qin Wentian and Huang Yudi. Although he was shocked that Qin Wentian would replace Li Yufeng, he could still accept it. After all, Huang Yudi himself was already an extremely terrifying character. Qin Wentian actually jumped levels to defeat him. It's just that if Qin Wentian fought against Li Yufeng, no one knew what would happen. What attitude would Li Yufeng have towards the change in the Supreme Might rankings this time around? Many people mused. At this moment, Qin Wentian had indeed stepped into the Sky Connecting Realm. When the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock radiated immortal light, he actually sensed something in his heart. Casting his gaze in the direction of the Sky Connecting Immortal Rock, he seemed to have sensed something. The Sky Connecting Realm is truly mysterious. Qin Wentian mumbled. The people in the surroundings glanced at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's words seemed to have a deeper meaning. Senior brother, let's hurry up. Jun Mengchen continued leading the way, heading towards the entrance of the Tiandao Sacred Academy, where Qing'er was at. As they advanced before they reached the exit, a figure suddenly halted. Wait. What's wrong? Qin Wentian glanced at the person who spoke. It was none other than Tang Sheng, a 9th-level Immortal Foundation senior brother from the Heavenly Talisman realm. They are coming over. Tang Sheng spoke. After that, Qin Wentian furrowed his brows, as though he could sense the baleful qi gushing over from afar. Disperse, we would rather die in battle than be captured alive. Qin Wentian spoke. The group of them instantly understood Qin Wentian's meaning. All of them dispersed at the same time, moving in different directions. The rules of the Tiandao Sacred Academy had changed. Only one's true self could enter the sky-connecting realm. But maybe it was to prevent the deaths of geniuses in the Sacred Academy. There were some rules in the Sacred Academy. If one died in battle in the sky-connecting realm, they would be teleported out. But once they were captured, Qin Wentian and the others understood the consequences. Retreating without fighting wasn't something glorious. However, wasn't it foolish to be an ant trying to shake a tree? Qin Wentian and the others knew that given how powerful their opponents were, if they fought head-on, they would definitely end up in a miserable state. A group of experts rushed over with extreme speed. Among them, Huang Yudi and the other experts from the 9 Emperors' immortal state were among them. Back then, they had indeed retreated after being threatened by Qin Wentian. However, they came to the entrance of the Sacred Academy where Qing'er was in and sealed this place, as though they were certain that Qin Wentian would definitely come here. Naturally, if it was merely the experts from the 9 Emperors' immortal state, Qin Wentian and the others wouldn't have retreated. They might even choose to fight. But now that the other party had the many greater demons of the White Tiger people, their lineup was truly terrifying. The towering baleful qi that gushed over seemed to be filled with the rage of the White Tiger people. Qin Wentian fled alone in a direction. The direction he fled to was actually the direction of the sky-connecting immortal rock in the central region of the sky-connecting realm. His speed was extremely fast. A pair of great rock wings appeared on his back, and he soared through the air like a true great rock. Far behind him, Huang Wudi was riding on his sword. His golden robes fluttered in the wind, and his eyes gleamed with cold killing intent. His speed was as fast as golden lightning. Only he alone was chasing after Qin Wentian. Under his control, Qin Wentian had no path of escape. Qin Wentian indeed had no path of escape. At this moment, another figure appeared before him. It was none other than the expert from the White Tiger royalty, Bai Mao. Bai Mao was a greater demon at the 7th level of Immortal Foundation. He stood there like a god of slaughter. Halting his steps, Qin Wentian stared at the figure in front of him. His expression was calm, but there was a coldness hidden in his eyes that caused the hearts of others to palpitate. Fleeing. The killing intent in Bai Mao's eyes wasn't concealed at all. He coldly spoke. After hiding for so long, you are finally willing to scram down the mountain? Qin Wentian was comprehending the Tao in the Sacred Academy, but in the mouth of Bai Mao, it became hiding. Beasts will always be beasts. Although the White Tiger people are proud and arrogant, they are all useless. But now they actually joined forces with others. Qin Wentian mocked. This White Tiger people joined forces with people from the 9 Emperors' immortal state, yet they were the first to mock him. How laughable. Behind him, Huang Wudi exuded an aura of sharpness as he walked over. He was at the 9th level of Immortal Foundation, and had once fought against Jia Nantian. How terrifying was his strength. He stood there, not in a hurry to act. He merely stared coldly at Qin Wentian. Humiliating a prince of the 9 Emperors' immortal empire? He naturally had to pay a price for this. It's Qin Wentian, the person who replaced Li Yufeng on the Supreme Might rankings. This place was the central region of the sky-connecting realm. Many people stared at Qin Wentian as their eyes gleamed with sharpness. More and more experts started to gather here, all of them staring at Qin Wentian. This fellow replaced Li Yufeng not long ago and now he was already in trouble. It was unknown what combat prowess he would display. Boom. Qin Wentian moved, directly rushing towards Bai Mao. His body glowed with a divine glow as his immortal foundation shone with a dazzling light. With a single strike, the roar of a dragon echoed out, wanting to kill everything in its path. Bai Mao roared in rage, directly reverting to his true form. He once fought against Qin Wentian on the battle platform. At that time, he was at the 6th level while Qin Wentian was at the 4th level. Right now, both of their cultivation bases have risen. Naturally, the leap from the 6th level to the 7th level was much greater, and the increase in his strength was much more terrifying as well. Today he wanted Qin Wentian to suffer a fate worse than death. When the incomparably huge white tiger's palm smashed down, it was as if a huge white tiger had charged out furiously, colliding with the demonic dragon and directly tearing it apart. Qin Wentian didn't seem to be able to sense how strong Bai Mao was. He stepped out and directly engaged in close-range combat. Each of his attacks were infused with a greater demon innate treasure that contained boundless might. It was like he was truly a supreme greater demon. Bai Mao howled in rage. His baleful qi transformed into boundless killing intent that enveloped this entire space. One man and one demon clashed against each other, causing mountains to crumble and the earth to shatter. The spectators felt their hearts trembling when they saw their battle. This Qin Wentian had such combat prowess. If he could give everyone a little surprise, he would definitely be ranked on the Supreme Might rankings. Huang Wudi didn't move. He stared at the battle as his eyes gleamed with royal immortal light. With him here, Qin Wentian wouldn't be able to escape even if he grew wings. How powerful! The spectators continued to stare at the battlefield. Occasionally, there would be people who would glance at Huang Wudi with confidence. Qin Wentian's attacks grew more and more violent, blasting Bai Mao into executing the white tiger killing art. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with a strange light. Today, he would let Bai Mao be complacent for a little while before taking his life in the future. As he thought of this, the power of Qin Wentian's attacks continued to crumble unceasingly under the might of the white tiger ultimate art. Qin Wentian's countenance turned pale as the boundless killing intent slammed into him, wanting to break apart everything. Huang Wudi's eyes flashed. He wanted to act, but it was already over. Qin Wentian's body vanished from sight along with the light from the sky connecting realm. Roar! Bai Mao let out a heaven-shaking roar of rage. Regretfully, he wasn't able to capture Qin Wentian alive. Although his combat prowess is extraordinary, he was killed so badly by Bai Mao. Would such a person be able to defeat Li Yufeng? Someone questioned. Chapter 1165. With so many experts gathered here, the commotion caused by this caused countless people to express their emotions. This was especially so because the main character of the earlier battle was the main character of the Supreme Might rankings. Bai Mao's cultivation base is at the 7th level, and he's also someone who obtained the White Tiger royalty. He should be more outstanding compared to the opponent Li Yufeng defeated back then. It's already not bad for Qin Wentian to be able to fight against Bai Mao to such an extent. Li Yufeng killed his opponent back then while Qin Wentian was defeated. Even if Bai Mao is stronger compared to Li Yufeng's opponent back then, Li Yufeng is still the stronger one. That's right, the change of the Supreme Might rankings this time around isn't that trustworthy. The experts in the air were as common as clouds as they discussed. Only now did Bai Mao know that the change of the Supreme Might rankings was actually because of Qin Wentian's appearance on the sky-connecting immortal rock. This caused him to feel even more unhappy as his killing intent grew even more terrifying. This time around his luck isn't bad. If he fought on the life and death arena like before, Qin Wentian would already be a dead man. The baleful aura radiating from Bai Mao was as terrifying as ever. That battle back then had become a knot in his heart. This time around, killing Qin Wentian in such a domineering manner had an extraordinary meaning to him. Huang Wudi stared at Bai Mao, his eyes flashing with disdain. He didn't expect the White Tiger royalty to be so weak, being so smug even after defeating someone with a lower cultivation base. But on account of the fact that both parties were allies, Huang Wudi didn't say anything. It was just that this idiot allowed Qin Wentian to escape, yet he was still so smug. Huang Wudi didn't say anything, but it didn't mean that the others would give face to Bai Mao. A cold voice drifted over. Idiot. This voice was exceptionally clear, causing the eyes of everyone to narrow as their expressions trembled. Earlier, only Bai Mao was speaking. In that case, the word idiot was clearly meant for Bai Mao. Someone actually used the word idiot to humiliate the people of the White Tiger royalty. In a certain direction, a group of experts could be seen walking over. The two in the lead were a man and a woman, both exuding extraordinary grace. The man's aura was extraordinary, and there was a hint of coldness on his face. The woman was a peerless beauty, a rare beauty. It's him. The eyes of everyone gleamed with sharpness. The other main character of the Supreme Might rankings has arrived. This man was none other than the saint child of the 100 Refinements sect, Li Yufeng. The person beside him was none other than the younger sister of Princess Kitamura, the princess of the Hokage Sengoku Kingdom, Bai Ming Nong Yue. Bai Mao's eyes swept over Li Yufeng. His baleful aura was terrifying. Who are you talking to? What kind of person was Bai Mao? He was a member of the White Tiger royalty. Why would he care about the status of humans? In his eyes, humans were lowly and inferior. How could they be compared to the great clans of the demon realm? Naturally, I'm talking to an idiot. Li Yufeng continued. If the voice earlier wasn't clear enough, this sentence was like a slap to the face. Given Li Yufeng's personality, how would he care about Bai Mao's status? Interesting. The spectators all had expressions of interest on their faces. Bai Mao just fought against Qin Wentian, who replaced Li Yufeng on the Supreme Might rankings. And now Li Yufeng appeared again. In the Tiandao Sacred Academy, everyone was a peak-level genius. There would be endless conflicts between them, and none of them would care about each other. Bai Mao's baleful aura gushed forth ferociously. He stared at Li Yufeng as he coldly spoke. Lowly fellow, scram out here. A mere livestock dares to mock humans? Ridiculous. Do you really think that the White Tiger people have a noble bloodline? It's just that after refining them, their meat would taste even better. Li Yufeng's tone was as calm as ever. Yet that calm voice was so sharp and piercing. It was like in his eyes, he basically didn't care about the White Tiger people at all. Boom. A towering baleful aura gushed forth, dancing in the air as the baleful aura gushed towards Li Yufeng. Even if Li Yufeng didn't want to fight, he had no choice but to come out and fight. Li Yufeng stepped out and released his immortal foundation. That incomparably resplendent immortal foundation shone with astral light, and in an instant, the temperature in the surroundings abruptly rose. Li Yufeng's entire body glowed with a terrifying radiance, like a supreme armor, unexcelled in the world. His immortal foundation was like a smelting furnace that could refine everything in the world. The 100 Refinements sect was named after the 100 Refinements sect. There was nothing in the world that they couldn't refine. A terrifying suction force gushed forth from the smelting furnace, as streams of baleful aura gushed into the furnace, becoming a part of it. It was rumored that the people of the 100 Refinements sect would grow stronger and stronger as they advanced. This was especially so for those saint children and leaders. When they reached the pinnacle, it was said that they could refine everything in the world. Don't use such trashy methods, it's very boring. Li Yufeng calmly spoke. There were so many experts in the immortal realms, and there would always be some outstanding characters. And those who could be ranked on the Supreme Might rankings were naturally extremely outstanding. Li Yufeng of the 100 Refinements sect was precisely one of those geniuses among geniuses. When facing against the White Tiger royalty, who was 2 levels higher than him, he actually said that his opponent's methods were trashy. How could Bai Mao endure this? He roared in rage, causing the entire space to tremble. The spectators all retreated. Those with weaker cultivation bases trembled as baleful aura seeped into their bodies. Li Yufeng naturally bore the brunt of it, but the immortal light radiating from him was extremely terrifying. Even his body was like a smelting furnace, forcibly refining the baleful aura away. White-eyed ghostly lord reverted to his true form, and stepped out with his sharp claws. One after another, White Tiger demons brought with them a boundless baleful aura, crushing the void and trampling everything in its path. The heavens and earth rumbled, and it was extremely powerful. Li Yufeng's expression was as calm as ever. The immortal light radiating from him gushed forth as terrifying chaotic currents of destruction gushed forth from the smelting furnace. There were streams of lava and streams of golden liquid. All of them transformed into destructive light that could refine everything as they gushed forth with incomparable ferocity. The towering baleful auras of the White Tigers were all blocked, and all of them were refined into nothingness. Although Li Yufeng was only at the 5th level of Immortal Foundation, he truly had the magnificence to refine everything in the world. A gigantic and terrifying white tiger rushed forward with a speed as fast as the wind. Its entire body was golden in color, seemingly indestructible. Bai Mao's gigantic body directly rushed into the chaotic currents. He truly wanted to see how Li Yufeng would refine him, who was at the 7th level of Immortal Foundation. Baleful aura circulated around him as his gigantic body advanced through the chaotic currents of destruction, aiming to crush Li Yufeng. However, Li Yufeng's lover, Princess Nongyue had a calm expression on her face, as though she had an intense confidence in Li Yufeng. The powerful Bai Mao descended, unleashing the treasured arts of the White Tiger people, wanting to destroy Li Yufeng. However, Li Yufeng's smelting furnace seemed to have fused together with his body. It was like he himself was a smelting furnace that could refine everything in the world. He pointed his finger forward and instantly, the light from the smelting furnace revolved around Bai Mao's body, frenziedly nibbling away at his opponent's defenses while Bai Mao's body advanced bit by bit, finally coming into contact with Li Yufeng's body. The killing treasured art slammed down as destructive energy gushed forth. Yet Li Yufeng, who had transformed into a smelting furnace, slowly fused it into his own body. Do you think that close combat is enough? Li Yufeng stared at the gigantic body of Bai Mao right before him. Immortal light radiated from him, wanting to refine everything as Bai Mao's defenses were broken apart bit by bit. Roar! A thunderous roar shook the heavens and earth. A human and a demon separated, each standing in a different location. Bai Mao stared hatefully at Li Yufeng, his baleful eyes gleaming with a terrifying light. The excitement he felt when he killed Qin Wentian had completely vanished at this moment. Although victory and defeat have yet to be determined in this battle, he had already been defeated. His cultivation base was 2 levels higher than Li Yufeng, but he still couldn't kill his opponent. If this wasn't defeat, what was it? How impudent. Bai Mao's eyes were exceptionally cold. I just can't bear to see you demons boasting that your bloodline is so high and mighty, yet you dare to call humans lowly? Who do you think you are? Li Yufeng calmly spoke. The spectators all sighed. Bai Mao killed Qin Wentian while Li Yufeng fought to a draw against Bai Mao. Seems like Li Yufeng is indeed stronger than Qin Wentian. This time around, the Supreme Might Immortal rankings have been updated wrongly. Li Yufeng is truly very strong. Qin Wentian basically doesn't have the qualifications to appear on the Supreme Might Immortal rankings. Qin Wentian, what does he count for? He's not worthy. After this battle, the voices of dissent gradually suppressed the voices of dissent. I don't have much interest in the Supreme Might Immortal rankings, but it's truly not a bad treasure. Naturally, I'm most interested in those who can ascend to the Supreme Might Immortal rankings. There's naturally a reason why Qin Wentian was able to replace me on the Supreme Might Immortal rankings. How can he be as weak as you all imagine him to be? In the earlier battle, he intentionally lost to Bai Mao and left the Supreme Might Immortal realms. How laughable that idiot is still so complacent. Li Yufeng calmly spoke, his words causing everyone to start. Li Yufeng was actually speaking up for Qin Wentian. Sage child, how do you know that Qin Wentian intentionally lost? Someone asked. For someone who can replace me, how can he be killed by that idiot? Is there even a need to say more? Li Yufeng spoke, his words causing everyone to perspire. How tyrannical. In that case, Sage Child feels that you are inferior to Qin Wentian? Another person asked. I didn't say that. Li Yufeng laughed. After that he turned and walked to the side of Princess Nongyue and pulled her hand. Let's go. Bai Ming Nongyue smiled and nodded. Her eyes were filled with deep affection when she looked at Li Yufeng. The two of them held hands as they departed. In the air, a faint voice drifted over. Qin Wentian was defeated. If he invites Bai Mao to the life and death arena next time, that idiot would most probably accept it. As this voice rang out, the eyes of everyone flashed. Could it be that Qin Wentian was actually so ruthless? He intentionally lost because he wanted to kill Bai Mao? If this was the case, this Qin Wentian was truly terrifying. Back then when he roasted the white tiger meat and ate it, it was on a life and death arena. At that time, weren't the white tiger people filled with confidence as well? The hearts of everyone were filled with emotions. Was Li Yufeng's words true? Right now, what was Qin Wentian thinking about? At this moment, Qin Wentian didn't think too much. After he was blasted out of the sky connecting realm, he entered it once more, making full use of the time and rushed to the place he wanted to go to earlier. As expected, even Huang Wudi was chasing after him. There was no one left to guard this place. Qin Wentian stepped out. At the next instant, in another sacred academy, Qin Wentian's figure appeared there. Chapter 1166. Qin Wentian walked out of the sky-connecting realm and stood in the middle of this sacred academy. He inclined his head and stared at the air as a warm smile flashed in his eyes. Qing'er was in this sacred academy. It has been over 30 years since they parted. How could he not miss her? Even back then when he was in his particle world staring up at the immortal realms, he didn't spend such a long period of time to do so. He didn't know how long more he would need to cultivate in the sacred academy. Were Qing'er and Qingqing still doing well? With a warm smile on his face, Qin Wentian slowly walked out. Since he knew that Qing'er was in this sacred academy, he naturally had to find Qing'er in the shortest time possible. No one would be able to stop him. The 9 emperors' immortal state, the White Tiger people, none of them would be able to stop him. As for the royal elder brother that Huang Yudi spoke of, he had never thought about what sort of character that person was. That had nothing to do with him. With a flash of his silhouette, Qin Wentian soared into the air and entered this sacred academy. This sacred academy was similarly filled with experts. It was even more lively compared to the sacred academy that Qin Wentian entered first. There would occasionally be experts flying through the air, entering this vast sacred academy. It wasn't so easy to find a person in the sacred academy. His eyes flashed. Qin Wentian saw many geniuses fighting below. There were many experts gathered here. He slowly walked out and landed on an ancient hall, directly stepping into the center of the battlefield. This caused many people to stare at him in astonishment. This was especially so for the 2 geniuses who were preparing for a battle. Both of them had strange expressions on their faces as they stared at Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian didn't seem embarrassed at all. He was here to attract attention, so he didn't care about the gazes of the crowd. He cupped his hands at the crowd and smiled. I'm new here. Do you know what is the most eye-catching place in the Sacred Academy? So it's a newcomer to the Sacred Academy. It's been so many years since the Sacred Academy opened, and you've only just entered. No wonder you're so reckless, the person opposite him said coldly. However, why do I feel that you look somewhat familiar? It's that fellow with the Saint-grade Immortal Foundation. Back then, I didn't manage to see him clearly, but I still remember him. Someone spoke, causing expressions of interest to appear on the faces of the spectators. Over 30 years ago, when Qin Wentian stepped into the Sacred Academy, he had attracted the attention of many. When this voice rang out, many people instantly came to their senses. Haha, Saint-grade Immortal Foundation. Did he just enter the Sacred Academy? Someone mocked. Back then, Qin Wentian, who had a perfect Saint-grade Immortal Foundation, was incomparably dazzling. Now that he just entered the Sacred Academy, there were naturally people who felt complacent in their hearts. Qin Wentian couldn't be bothered to explain anything. He continued smiling as he looked at the crowd. You only managed to enter the Sacred Academy because you have a perfect Saint-grade Immortal Foundation. I'm sure you must be filled with unwillingness in your heart. If you want to become famous quickly, you can head to the Shizhong Wall and become famous overnight. At that time, the gazes of the entire Sacred Academy would be focused on you. Someone laughed, causing expressions of interest to appear on the faces of many people. There were 4 Sacred Academies, and each Sacred Academy had its own unique place. And for this Sacred Academy, there was a gigantic Shizhong Wall. However, for someone who only managed to enter the Sacred Academy after 30+ years, wouldn't he be looking for trouble by heading to the Shizhong Wall? However, there were also many people who were suspicious. Did the words newcomer really refer to the time he just entered the Sacred Academy? For someone with a perfect Saint-grade Immortal Foundation, would it take him 30+ years to enter the Sacred Academy? Qin Wentian didn't know what the crowd was thinking. He clasped his hands and asked, Might I ask where the Shizhong Wall is located? Head straight in that direction. Do you see the ancient palaces there? When you arrive there, you will know the location of the Shizhong Wall with a single glance. Someone pointed the way. Qin Wentian clasped his hands and smiled. Many thanks for your guidance. Farewell. After Qin Wentian spoke, he directly soared into the air. Many people laughed, but after that, they continued to pay attention to the 2 geniuses before them, and had no time to bother with Qin Wentian. There would be many people heading to the Shizhong Wall every day. For someone like Qin Wentian who only managed to enter the Sacred Academy after 30+ years, how could he possibly attract the attention of the entire Sacred Academy? What a fool's dream. Those two geniuses who initially wanted to compete also had speechless smiles on their faces because of Qin Wentian's appearance. After that, they entered their combat state once again. Qin Wentian followed the directions, and just like what that person said, he easily found the Shizhong Wall. The Shizhong Wall was simply too conspicuous. Right in front of the ancient palaces, the chimes of bells could be heard as many geniuses walked towards the Shizhong Wall. Qin Wentian landed in front of the stone bell rampart and stared at the resplendent immortal might radiating from it. There were countless divine inscriptions and diagrams engraved on the rampart. The divine inscriptions and diagrams on the rampart converged into a complex ancient bell that radiated resplendent immortal light. The number of geniuses in front of the Shizhong Wall was as many as the clouds. All of them had their eyes closed as they advanced with great difficulty. Occasionally, there would be someone who forcefully took a step forward, but was directly blasted away by the bell chimes as they coughed out blood. What's so special about this Shizhong Wall? Qin Wentian asked the person beside him. This place was extremely vast and there were many experts spectating from the sidelines. That person glanced at Qin Wentian in bewilderment. This person actually didn't know what the Shizhong Wall of the Sacred Academy was. Do you see the footprints in the area enveloped by the Shizhong Wall? If you walk towards these footprints, the Shizhong Wall will radiate a terrifying might that resonates with your body, tempering your bones and blood, tempering your immortal foundation and triggering the laws of the Great Tao. This is a miraculous place in the Sacred Academy. There would be geniuses cultivating here every day, and there was even a person who sat on the wall for 12 years, breaking through and strengthening his combat prowess. That person spoke to Qin Wentian. He then continued, "There's a total of 81 footprints, the number 9 by 9. There was once a supreme character who cultivated here for several years, and managed to complete the 81 steps, arriving before the Shizhong Wall, and triggering the resonance of the laws of the Sacred Academy. His immortal foundation became perfect, and he was truly unparalleled." Qin Wentian listened quietly as his eyes gleamed with sharpness. As expected, the 4 sacred academies were all different. Each of them had their own cultivation grounds. This Shizhong Wall was precisely one of the cultivation grounds of this sacred academy. And in the past, he was in the same sacred academy as many other greater demons, but there wasn't such a place for cultivation here. Qin Wentian scrutinized the area enveloped by the Shizhong Wall. There were many paths leading to the Shizhong Wall, and each path had a total of 81 footprints. There were already quite a few people who managed to traverse more than half of the footprints, and every time they took a step, the Shizhong Wall would radiate a powerful immortal light, causing the bells to chime. This sacred ground can actually allow one to perfect their immortal foundation, transforming it into a saint-grade immortal foundation. From this, one can see how profound it is. Qin Wentian silently mused. He knew that a saint-grade immortal foundation was a legendary immortal foundation, and was incomparably rare. Who would have thought that today in this sacred academy, where so many geniuses of the immortal realms gathered, someone actually managed to form a saint-grade immortal foundation? The Tiandao Sacred Academy was as expected of a place where ancient emperors could emerge from. In that case, if one can complete the 81 footprints, the resonance of the laws of the Sacred Academy would be triggered, and everyone in the Sacred Academy would be able to sense it. Qin Wentian asked. He came here precisely because he wanted to attract attention, and use the most direct method to find Qing'er. Haha, you truly know how to boast shamelessly. That person glanced coldly at Qin Wentian. The moment he arrived, he actually said that he could complete the 81 footprints? What an arrogant fellow, not knowing the immensity of the heavens and earth. I have no intention of mocking you. It's just that your words are simply too ridiculous. Do you know how difficult it is to complete all 81 steps? Let alone 81, as long as you can complete 63 steps. It would be sufficient to shake the entire Sacred Academy. If you can complete 72 steps, a dazzling radiance would be born. If you can complete 81 steps, Your words would resound throughout the entire sacred academy, echoing for a very long time. That person had a look of yearning in his eyes, as well as a hint of disappointment and frustration. 81 steps. Even now, he could still remember the voice that resounded throughout the entire sacred academy. From then on, who in the sacred academy didn't know of that supreme character? And from then on, that person became one of the most outstanding geniuses in the entire Tiandao Sacred Academy. Many thanks. Qin Wentian smiled. He could sense that the other party had no intention of humiliating him. He probably felt that his words were a little too arrogant. Indeed, since he directly asked about the 81 steps, it was no wonder that the other party would have such thoughts. Moving forward, Qin Wentian stepped into the area of the Shizhong Wall. Looking at the 81 footprints on the path of immortals, he took the first step. In an instant, the Shizhong Wall seemed to have sensed something, and celestial light directly shone on him. At that moment, Qin Wentian felt an extremely strange feeling. It was as if the aura of his entire body was locked on by the Shizhong Wall, and there was a faint rule power flowing within his body. How strange! Qin Wentian took 9 consecutive steps. The feeling became extremely intense, and the bell on the Shizhong Wall rang, vibrating within his body. This feeling is very satisfying. Qin Wentian had a smile on his face as he continued forward. Every step he took was incomparably stable, and as he moved forward, a buzzing sound rang out from his body. His body was like a bell, and the rule power constantly transformed into immortal marks, blasting into his flesh and blood. When Qin Wentian took the 36th step, the bell rang in his body for a very long time. It was as though he was receiving a baptism of law energy. When he took the 45th step, he felt an extremely intense elemental energy. That was an elemental energy that belonged to him. It frenziedly flowed within his body, blasting into his body with astonishing might. Boom! When he took the 46th step, the light from the 6 ancient bells on the Shizhong Wall shone on his body. A terrifying force blasted over, causing him to feel as though his body was about to shatter. Qin Wentian's physique couldn't be said to be weak. He had the physique of an immortal devil. However, even he felt this way, let alone others. Qin Wentian took the 50th step. The bell chimes from his body were like a raging storm, threatening to destroy his body at any moment. Has this fellow gone mad? The eyes of the person who spoke to Qin Wentian earlier gleamed with sharpness. Taking the 50th step consecutively wasn't a good thing. The accumulated energy in his body hadn't been released yet, and once it erupted, it could directly take away his life. There was once such an example. An extremely terrifying genius with extraordinary talent managed to take the 60th step consecutively. Many people felt that he had the chance to take the 72nd step or above, but in the end, he was directly killed. The Shizhong Wall was a sacred ground. It could temper people, but it could also be used to kill. Many experts stared in the direction of Qin Wentian. Beside him, there was another genius who was advancing with difficulty. That genius opened his eyes and glanced at Qin Wentian as he coldly spoke. You are still the same as before, wanting to be in the limelight no matter where you go. Even if you die, you wouldn't know how you died. Qin Wentian glanced at the person who spoke. This person was someone he knew back in the God Hand Mountain Manor, Yingting. Back then, this fellow was extremely arrogant and was brutally abused by him. But now, he became the one who wanted to be in the limelight. Qin Wentian's eyes were emotionless. He glanced at Yingting before shifting his gaze to the front. He didn't look at Yingting as his voice rang out. Who are you? Gotcha. Yingting clenched his fists tightly. No matter how much he acted as though he didn't care about Qin Wentian, how could he forget the humiliation he suffered in the past? Although he appeared calm, his heart was burning with rage. Qin Wentian's words instantly ignited the flames of his anger. Qin Wentian asked him who he was? Qin Wentian was telling him that in the eyes of Qin Wentian, Yingting had never existed. Chapter 1167. What sort of character was Yingting? Although he wasn't that outstanding in the Sacred Academy, he was still a prince in the Ying clan, one of the 3 great ancient clans of the southern regions. Yet he was humiliated repeatedly by Qin Wentian. This time around, Qin Wentian used 3 simple words. "Who are you?" to slap his face. After speaking this sentence, Qin Wentian continued moving forwards, passing Yingting. This step was akin to stepping on Yingting's heart. The cultivation of the Shizhong wall required one to take it step by step. Every step could be cultivated, slowly accumulating and comprehending the energy of the Shizhong wall. From there, one could gain benefits from comprehending it and improve oneself. This was the experience of many geniuses in the Sacred Academy. It was extremely rare for someone like Qin Wentian to be able to take 50 steps in a single breath. But at this moment, Yingting couldn't care less. He took a step forward as his aura surged. Bell chimes rang out unceasingly from his body. He roared as he turned his gaze to Qin Wentian. He coldly spoke. "After so many years, you are still as arrogant as ever. However, in the Sacred Academy where geniuses gather, who do you think you are?" Qin Wentian didn't reply. He took another step forward, directly engulfing Yingting's silhouette. This caused Yingting's countenance to turn ashen as an extremely unsightly expression appeared on his face. So what if Qin Wentian might be killed? Right now he was left behind. Qin Wentian's disregard caused his anger to burn even more intensely. Boom! Yingting took another step forward, unwilling to be outdone. He stood shoulder to shoulder with Qin Wentian, although they weren't on the same path. Qin Wentian glanced at Yingting as a smile flickered in his eyes. His smile was extremely radiant, filled with no restraints at all. He still didn't say anything and took another step forward. It seemed as though it was extremely difficult for him to do so, but he still succeeded. This was the 53rd step. Yingting stared at Qin Wentian with a cold expression on his face. Was he finally unable to endure it? If this continued, what awaited Qin Wentian would be the same as that genius back then, killed on the spot. His aura surged as he released his immortal foundation. Faint draconic roars could be heard as he took another step forward. With a thunderous roar, Yingting only felt his bones and meridians being battered by the frenzied attacks of attribute energies. It felt like there were terrifying demonic dragons wreaking havoc in his body. The bell chimes blasted unceasingly. His robes fluttered in the wind as he opened his eyes and stared at Qin Wentian, only to see that Qin Wentian had a difficult expression on his face. He struggled for a long time before he lifted his foot again. Yingting stared at Qin Wentian as a cold smile appeared on his face. Would Qin Wentian still be able to take this step? The 54th step, which was also the number of 6 to 9, Qin Wentian stepped out as his body trembled violently. Yingting's eyes gleamed with sharpness when he saw this. Qin Wentian couldn't endure any longer? It would be best if he was killed on the spot. However, although Qin Wentian's body was trembling, he managed to stabilize himself. He drew in a deep breath as he stared at Yingting with a mocking gaze. This gaze caused Yingting's entire body to be filled with rage. He was humiliated in the God Hand Mountain manner. How could he be defeated again today? As he thought of this, Yingting continued forward. With a thunderous roar, his aura towered up into the sky. Violent currents of qi gushed forth as his body trembled violently. But eventually, he managed to stabilize himself as his blood and qi churned wildly. At this moment, the spectators outside the Shizhong wall also saw Qin Wentian clashing with Yingting as expressions of interest appeared on their faces. This Qin Wentian was truly astonishing. In such a short period of time, he had already stepped out the number of 6 to 9. With another step, he would be able to reach the number of 7 to 9. That was a hurdle, and this hurdle had once obstructed many geniuses. Qin Wentian hesitated for a moment before he finally stepped out. Yingting was extremely nervous as he stared fixedly at Qin Wentian. He was waiting for Qin Wentian to fail, and for him to be killed by the tyrannical energy accumulated in his body. Boom! The sound of the bell reverberated through the air, emanating from every pore. Even his bones were emitting thunderous sounds, and his blood was rumbling. Qin Wentian groaned in pain as he tottered, as though he was in his twilight years and could wither away at any moment. But gradually, he actually steadied himself and stood firmly on the ground. Yingting's countenance was ashen. Qin Wentian stood firm, and once again turned his head to look at Qin Wentian. The provocation in his gaze was so obvious. Qin Wentian clenched his fists tightly as he stared at Qin Wentian. His rationality told him that he shouldn't continue moving forward. He needed to stop for a moment and sort out the chaotic qi flow in his body. This step was extremely dangerous. As a descendant of the Ying clan, how can I endure such humiliation? So what if it's dangerous? A voice rang out in Yingting's heart. As he thought of this, his courage grew even stronger as he encouraged himself. A descendant of the Ying clan, when faced with a challenge, he would never shirk his responsibility. As he thought of this, Yingting's heroic spirit soared to the clouds. He lifted his foot and took another step forward. With this step, an even more powerful aura gushed forth as attribute energies gushed into his body. Qin Wentian groaned in pain as his body swayed unsteadily. He coughed out another mouthful of blood as his body was directly flung through the air. The terrifying energy within his body erupted as the bell chimes pierced through his body, leaving behind numerous wounds. Yingting's body slammed into the ground, his countenance as pale as paper. He inclined his head and stared at the silhouette of Qin Wentian, his countenance extremely unsightly. In the end, he still lost to Qin Wentian. But so what? His conviction hadn't wavered, his courage was still the same. But at this moment, Yingting saw Qin Wentian glancing back at him with a smile on his face. After that, under the astonished gaze of Yingting, Qin Wentian continued to step forward. He didn't look like he was on the verge of collapsing at any moment. Every step he took caused intense bell chimes to ring out, and every step he took felt like trampling on Yingting's heart. That was an insurmountable gap. At the same time, it was also an extreme humiliation. At this moment, how could Yingting not understand that Qin Wentian was intentionally toying with him, treating him like a fool? At this moment, all his so-called courage had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only incompetence and stupidity. With a wah sound, Yingting coughed out another mouthful of blood. He was so angry that he actually fainted. Such a scene caused everyone to have a look of astonishment on their faces. That fellow was so ruthless, he actually injured a Heaven's Chosen and caused him to faint. Moreover, from the beginning to the end, he didn't even make a single move. It was as if Yingting was the one who humiliated himself. Qin Wentian didn't look at Yingting anymore. He continued walking forward. For a character like Yingting, if he didn't see him again, he would have already forgotten about him. However, since Yingting wanted to humiliate him so badly, he didn't mind playing along with Yingting. At this moment, Qin Wentian had already taken 63 steps, which was the number 7 by 9. If he continued forward, he would enter the number 8 by 9. Many people had solemn expressions on their faces, exclaiming in admiration at Qin Wentian's performance. Whether it was against the immortal treading steps or the confidence of toying with Yingting in the palm of his hand, everyone could feel the sharpness of his aura. It was as if he really wanted to challenge the number 9 by 9. The 64 steps was the beginning of the number 8 by 9. However, when Qin Wentian's foot landed, it was as steady as a boulder. That frail body of his was like a stone pillar that pierced through the heavens, not wavering in the slightest because of that crushing force. What was even more terrifying was that Qin Wentian managed to walk all the way here in one breath. At this moment, Qin Wentian could already feel an immense pressure. This Shizhong wall was extremely powerful. The law energy he was proficient in seemed to be reflected back at him, baptizing his flesh and blood, allowing him to comprehend it himself. Every impact was like the sound of a morning bell ringing in his body. However, it was still unable to shake him. This was naturally because of his perfect physique and unparalleled bloodline. Qin Wentian's cultivation path was too solid. He had a perfect immortal foundation, an indestructible body like that of a fiend god, and a powerful bloodline. He had no weaknesses. It was naturally hard to break him. However, in front of Qin Wentian, there were still some powerful geniuses. At the 75th step, there was an extremely powerful character. The aura he exuded was extremely sharp, containing the aura of a king. His sword intent gushed forth, piercing straight into the stone bell rampart. This man was none other than Gu Shao, a disciple of the Supreme Sword School. He was an innate sword king. Back then, Qin Wentian had once met him in the royal palace of the Evergreen Kingdom. The Supreme Sword School joined forces with the Tenlon Heaven Kingdom to threaten the Evergreen Kingdom and issued a challenge. Back then, Gu Xiao was one of the participants and his combat prowess was extremely tyrannical. Defeating and humiliating a third-rate genius, would that make you feel more confident? Gu Xiao's tone was as sharp as his sword. Back then, Qin Wentian's incomparably arrogant performance in the Evergreen Kingdom Palace had angered many geniuses from the Tenlon Heaven Kingdom, as well as the Supreme Sword School. This Gu Xiao actually mocked Ying Tung, saying that Ying Tung was merely a third-rate Heaven's Chosen. Indeed, when compared to him who was an innate Sword King, Ying Tung truly didn't qualify as a second-rate Heaven's Chosen. This Gu Xiao could reach the 75th step, and was only 6 steps away from the endpoint. From this, one could see how powerful he was. In addition, no one knew if he still had the potential to advance further. Qin Wentian inclined his head and glanced at Gu Xiao as he calmly replied, "It doesn't matter if I'm confident or not. My confidence doesn't need to depend on humiliating others to raise it. It's just that for those who want to humiliate me, I don't mind returning the favor to them. Regardless of third-rate geniuses or truly terrifying geniuses, it's all the same." This fellow. Several geniuses felt their hearts trembling. After injuring Ying Tung by toying with him, Qin Wentian was going to issue a challenge to Gu Xiao who just reached the 75th step? Regardless of third-rate geniuses or truly terrifying geniuses, it's all the same. The meaning behind this sentence was extremely clear. Regardless of Ying Tung or Gu Xiao, it's all the same. Gu Xiao's lips curled into a cold smile. His foot, which hadn't moved for a long time, finally moved once more. A supreme sword might pierce through the air, akin to a myriad of swords piercing through his heart, aiming for Gu Xiao's body. However, he simply stood there like a sword piercing through the heavens. With a single step, he took the 76th step. Using a domineering step, he replied to Qin Wentian's words. There were only 5 more steps left before Gu Xiao would reach the endpoint. How powerful, how difficult would it be to challenge Gu Xiao? The hearts of the crowd trembled. Other than that, from the 73rd step to the 81st step, there were still several experts present. Each position represented a terrifying genius. Chapter 1168. Gu Xiao 76 steps. As his foot landed, the sound of the bell reverberated through the air. As long as Gu Xiao willed it, the sound of the bell could be heard from afar. And at this moment, Qin Wentian 64 steps. Although there seemed to be only a distance of 12 steps, everyone in the academy knew that if one wanted to step on the final few footprints, it would be akin to ascending the stairway to the heavens. It was incomparably dangerous. How difficult would it be to cross the final step? Qin Wentian stood there. When he saw Gu Xiao domineeringly stepping out to reply to him, a smile flashed on his face. He calmly stood in the midst of the tempest, allowing the boundless energy to blast into his flesh, bones, and blood. However, he still stood there with his hands clasped behind his back. His robes fluttered in the wind, exuding a supreme grace. Just like what he had said, regardless of whether it was Ying Tung or Gu Xiao, there was no need for him to compare himself with them. He came here only because he wanted to meet Qing Er earlier. But since Ying Tung took the initiative to provoke and humiliate him, he wouldn't mind teaching him a lesson that he wouldn't forget. As the King of Swords in the Supreme Sword School, Gu Xiao was clearly much more outstanding compared to Ying Tung. But even if Gu Xiao challenged him with this step, Qin Wentian would naturally accept it. 76 steps, is it very strong? Qin Wentian mumbled. As the sound of his voice faded, a huge wave of commotion swept through the crowd. Many stared at him in astonishment. 76 steps, very strong? How could it be merely strong? With the existence of the Stone Bell Rampart, there were only a handful of people who could cross the 72nd step of the Stone Bell Rampart. Every step after that was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. The 76th step wasn't an ordinary level of strength. Qin Wentian's words were simply ridiculous. This fellow dares to provoke Gu Xiao, yet he doesn't know how strong the 76 steps are. Right now he's at the 64th step. These 12 steps are enough to kill him several times over, the crowd said without hesitation. They had all tried it before and knew how terrifying the Shizhong wall was. However, as they were discussing, Qin Wentian also took a step forward. On the 65th step, celestial light shone around him, and a terrifying power pierced through Qin Wentian's body, causing his muscles and bones to tremble and his blood to roar. The celestial light on his body continued to shine, becoming stronger and stronger. Stand still. The gazes of the crowd froze, but before they had the time to be shocked, they saw Qin Wentian lifting his foot again. He took the 66th step, becoming an immortal with a single step. His body was surrounded by 7-colored immortal light. Various kinds of energies penetrated his body, wanting to destroy him. However, his steps were still as steady as a boulder. His handsome face and slightly frail body stood there like a mountain, unshakable. Is he courting death? Heavy expressions appeared on the faces of the crowd. Back then, that terrifying genius was also killed here. He took over 60 steps in a single breath, and the stone bell rampart energy within his body was so terrifying that it was sufficient to kill someone. Qin Wentian actually took so many steps in such a short period of time? The violent energy accumulated in his body had no way to quench it. Did he want to walk down the same path as that genius? Boom, boom, boom. He took 3 consecutive steps, and there seemed to be a marvelous rhythm to it. It was as though the sound of the great Tao of heaven and earth was reverberating through the air. A storm of wind and rain gushed forth from Qin Wentian. There was a supreme pressure there, and the bell chimes within his body felt as though they could erupt at any moment. However, the light radiating from Qin Wentian's body was incomparably resplendent, akin to a fiend god. The radiance he emitted was simply unexcelled in the world, forcibly suppressing the rampaging energy within his body. At this moment, Qin Wentian had already taken 69 steps, breaking the record for the number of steps he took in a single breath. He was even further compared to that heaven-chosen who was killed by the Shizhong wall. However, Qin Wentian naturally didn't die. Many people had heavy expressions on their faces. Many geniuses who were surpassed by Qin Wentian opened their eyes and stared at Qin Wentian. There was actually such a terrifying person who could use his tyrannical physique and tyrannical bloodline to suppress the energy of the Shizhong wall? Naturally, this was only the beginning of the shock. Because Qin Wentian still didn't rest. His body moved forward and he lifted his foot again. His movements were so natural, like he was walking on flat ground. There was no pause at all, exuding an extraordinary grace. This step was already the 70th step. As his foot landed, the glow of God's hand radiated from him. For a moment, a towering light radiated from his body, illuminating the entire space. Qin Wentian basked in that light as the bell chimes rang out. It was as though he was being suppressed there, causing his body to tremble violently. The Shizhong wall was very powerful. Qin Wentian could clearly sense that it wasn't an ordinary level of strength. This Shizhong wall had already locked onto his aura and copied his attribute energy. After that, the ancient bells on the wall started to reverberate back to him, cleansing his muscles, bones, blood, and flesh, battering against his immortal foundation, wanting to use his energy to destroy himself. However, if he could endure it, he could also use the energy to cleanse his body. However, although the Shizhong wall was powerful, how many Qin Wentians were there in this sacred academy? A perfect and flawless immortal foundation, a powerful physique, and the power of God's hand. This body of his was simply at the pinnacle of physical strength. As for his bloodline, wasn't it also incomparably tyrannical? He stood there, his long robes fluttering in the wind. The terrifying bell chimes were unable to affect him at all. The 71st step was completed. As this step landed, there were only 10 steps left. As this step landed, there were only 5 steps left to Gu Xiao. As this step landed, he continued to break the record. As this step landed, the hearts of everyone trembled. Stepping out 71 steps in a single breath, even if Qin Wentian was killed, it was already sufficient to stun the entire sacred academy. Being able to reach this step was already something worthy of pride. The gazes of many people when they looked at Qin Wentian changed, turning heavy. Was 76 steps very powerful? This was Qin Wentian's words. Before this he sounded arrogant and ignorant. But from the looks of it now, wasn't it also because of his absolute confidence? Maybe, Qin Wentian would really be able to do it. If he could do it, there was no doubt that it would be a ruthless slap to Gu Xiao's face. Gu Xiao stabilized his steps. Clearly, he had also noticed the domineering Qin Wentian. 71 steps. He knew that he wouldn't be able to do it. However, he wouldn't feel that he was inferior to Qin Wentian because of this. In fact, there was a trace of jealousy in his heart. This was human nature. It had nothing to do with one's strength. At this moment, Qin Wentian wasn't thinking about Gu Xiao. He could feel the raging storm of energy in his body that could crush everything. Right now he was only thinking about moving forward. At the instant he stepped out, whether it was Gu Xiao or Yingting, all of that was secondary. He had never looked at Yingting in the eye before. Back then, Yingting was already inferior to him. Could it be that Yingting could surpass him now? If that was the case, he would have wasted all these years of cultivation. As for Gu Xiao, although he was strong, Qin Wentian still didn't view him as a formidable opponent. Maybe in his subconsciousness, Qin Wentian felt that Gu Xiao didn't have the qualifications to do so. The final step of the 8x9, the 72nd step, was completed. Everyone could feel the tremors in this space as the bell chimes reverberated unceasingly. An incomparably intense radiance shot out from the Shizhong wall. Even from extremely far away, everyone could see the phenomenon occurring on the Shizhong wall. From afar, at the place where Qin Wentian was previously at, the two geniuses were violently fighting. The spectators in the surroundings all felt the tremors in the direction of the Shizhong wall. They inclined their heads and stared in that direction as strange expressions appeared on their faces. Today, the direction of the Shizhong wall was somewhat abnormal. Could it be that a powerful character had started to move away from his original position? Could it be that fellow? Someone thought of Qin Wentian who appeared earlier. However, they soon shook their heads. That fellow was truly laughable. How could he possibly affect the tremors of the Shizhong wall? In addition, he had just arrived at the Shizhong wall not too long ago. But to be able to witness the phenomenon occurring on the Shizhong wall, that fellow could already be considered quite lucky. In front of the Shizhong wall, Qin Wentian was currently enduring the terrifying impact. He paused for a moment as his body glowed with an intense radiance, terrifying to the extreme. The accumulated energy in one's body is getting stronger and stronger. Taking a step in one breath is truly difficult. No wonder there were people who couldn't withstand it and were killed by the tremors. Sometimes, when one reaches the end, it would be hard to get off the tiger. Qin Wentian silently thought in his heart. The might of the Shizhong wall was the most terrifying, and the impact on one's body was the strongest. However, he didn't hesitate. He lifted his foot again as the light of truth shimmered faintly. Countless runic inscriptions circulated around his body as Qin Wentian stepped out. There were 81 steps in the Shizhong wall. There were only 9 steps left. Qin Wentian took the first step, the 73rd step. Boom. A dull sound rang out. Within the dullness, an extraordinary might could be felt. The earth trembled and even the ancient hall started to tremble, as though it could collapse at any moment. Those experts who were spectating the battle earlier felt their hearts trembling as they felt that the Shizhong wall was becoming more and more abnormal. In the other places, the geniuses from the various powers raised their heads and stared in the direction of the Shizhong wall. Their eyes gleamed with sharpness. It was unknown which genius had taken the final step, causing the ground to tremble continuously. From this, one could see how violent the might was and how terrifying the accumulated energy was. The 73rd step. The hearts of everyone in front of the Shizhong wall trembled violently. Qin Wentian actually took the 72nd step and continued forward. At this moment, they couldn't help but to be impressed by Qin Wentian. Such a character was extremely rare in the Sacred Academy. There had never been such a character before. Even for him back then, although he managed to take the 81st step and established an incomparably perfect saint-grade immortal foundation, he didn't manage to take the 70th step in a single breath. Such a method was simply insane. In many places, Rumbling sounds rang out unceasingly. The experts from the various powers all felt the tremors as their expressions turned heavy as they stared in the direction of the Shizhong wall. How powerful! At this moment, Qin Wentian truly felt the essence of the Shizhong wall. It was too powerful. He could feel a fearsome might accumulating within his body. Once it erupted, it might really destroy him. At this moment, he was truly stuck between a rock and a hard place. He could only continue forward, using force to break force. His supreme physique radiated a startling light as his saint-grade immortal foundation manifested. Attribute energy circulated around him, transforming into a divine glow. Qin Wentian lifted his foot again, and took the 74th step. The rumbling sounds continued, causing the hearts of everyone to tremble once more. From afar, the experts from the various powers all turned their gazes over here. In fact, the two geniuses who fought against Qin Wentian earlier also stopped their battle as they inclined their heads and stared in the direction of the Shizhong wall. What happened over there? Did that expert from the Supreme Sword School unleash his might? Or could it be that expert from the myriad Devil Islands who started his path of rampage? Or was it that prince from the Sinluo Immortal Empire who started his journey? You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.